Testing, 1, 2, 3.
Lori, you still look quite good carrying all that load of weight on your shoulders.
We missed you, Klaus, this weekend.
Still waiting for video, but sometimes audio picks up earlier.
Did you hear that?
Yes.
Klaus, did Klaus hear me? He didn't even nod.
Yes, I did hear you. What can I say? I just
You'd say you missed us too.
Yes. Well, I guess I had a non-vax party by myself.
So audio is being picked up on YouTube.
Okay. Thank you.
Video's live.
Great. Thank you. So good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Electoral Area Services Committee meeting of April 6, 2022. As always, I'd like to acknowledge our meeting today on the ancestral territories of the Coast Salish people. And before we begin, since we have Director Morrison there, I'd just like to thank him for, we're just back from the annual AVICC convention in Victoria, which is a big success. And Ian, I'd just like to thank you for all your work as president of AVICC and for pulling that off. Virtual clap from everyone. Okay, we have a varied agenda today, so I'll turn to the first item on the agenda, please, Ms. Legault.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The first item is M1, adoption of the minutes of the Special Electoral Area Services Committee meeting of March 10th.
Thank you. Any additions or? I see it's moved and seconded. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Next item, please, Ms. Legault.
I'm sorry, my apologies, Mr. Chair. We didn't adopt the agenda. I skipped right over to the minutes. There were no additions to the agenda, but there were 2 supplemental items of correspondence that were sent out this morning.
Okay. Any further additions or deletions from anyone? No? Okay. So I'd like to, a motion to approve the agenda. Moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Okay, next item, please, Ms. Legault.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On to item M2, which is the adoption of the minutes of the Electoral Area Services Committee meeting of March 16th.
Have a mover moved, seconded. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Ms. Legault.
Item M3 is adoption of the Special Electoral Area Services Committee meeting minutes of March 25th.
Okay, do I have a mover? Second, please. Still looking for a seconder.
Second.
There we go. Thank you, Ian. Okay, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Next item, please, Ms. Legault.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We are on to public input period.
Okay.
I'm just going to check the lobby for the applicant. Unfortunately, the individual has not joined the meeting at this time.
Okay.
So moving on to correspondence, item C1 is a grant and aid request for Electoral Area A.
Okay. And could you read the recommendation, please, Ms. Legault?
The proposed recommendation is that it be recommended to the board that a grant and aid Electoral Area A, Mill Bay Malahat, in the amount of $7,000 be provided to the Rotary Club of South Cowichan to support the replacement of the Welcome to Mill Bay signs on Highway 1.
Okay. That's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Next item, please, Ms. Legault.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. C2 is a grant and aid request Electoral Area I, and the recommendation is that it be recommended to the board that a grant and aid Electoral Area I, Yubo-Mead Creek, in the amount of $3,500 be provided to the Cowichan Lake District Chamber of Commerce to support the mobile services unit.
Thank you. That's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Next item, please, Ms. Legault.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On to information items. Item C3, grant and aid request Electoral Area I, a second Electoral Area I, and the recommendation is that it be recommended to the board that a grant and aid Electoral Area I in the amount of $500 be provided to Lake Cowichan Secondary School for a bursary for graduating student that resides in Electoral Area I to support their future education or training.
Okay, thank you. So that's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. So, Ms. Legault.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Now moving on to information items. Item IN1, Electoral Area C, Cobble Hill Advisory Planning Commission minutes of March 22nd, and Electoral Area E, Cowichan Station, Satlam Glenora Advisory Planning Commission minutes of March 8th for information.
Great. Any comments on those? I see Director Nicholson.
Thank you, Chair. I will comment that I read both the minutes, and one of the minutes was from Electoral Area E APC, and I know that they make a point of providing information on what they discussed, and I think that is very helpful in bullet form, just the topics that they think are important to be considered. Whereas the other APC minutes, it's just like they recommend yes or no, and that doesn't give you any context for the discussion, and I find that not very helpful. Thank you.
Yes. Okay, Director Wilson.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, that's it's an interesting point that Director Nicholson makes there as well. I also have some concerns about the way the minutes are being presented. They're not really, we're not actually expanding on what was discussed there. And I'd just like to ask if there is any way that we can make it more of a, more expressive so that we can see exactly what was said there as opposed to yes, no. It's a small point, but very important. And the other thing, of course, is there any chance that these could be recorded?
Okay. Don't know if we have any staff that would like to answer that last one or comment in general. Ms. Charles.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the APCs have received orientation around minutes. As you know, we don't take anecdotal minutes at the CVRD. That's not the standard practice. But the APCs were instructed that they should formulate the recommendations in the form of the resolutions so that they can, as the Area EAPC has done, be clear on what recommendations they have, if there are specific issues that need to be addressed, and to include those in their resolutions. And so we can do some more training with the APCs as we go forward to ensure that they're aware that they have that opportunity. In terms of the recording of the meetings in their entirety, that's certainly something we can do if we are recording the same meetings that we, in the way that we do for board and the board's committees at the current time through WebEx. If we are moving back to, strictly in-person meetings without the WebEx platform, then that becomes a little bit more tricky, and I would defer to our legislative services experts in terms of any sort of FOI-related issues with respect to recording.
Okay, any follow-up, Director Wilson? Director Martman?
Maybe I can ask a follow-up question to that comment, and that is about the our.
I think you need to turn your video off there.
Yeah, sorry, Director Martman. Yeah, if you could, thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. The question I have is just whether or not was it ever decided that staff were going to be provided to record minutes at the APC meetings?
Not sure, Ms. Chiroff.
Through you, Mr. Chair. So the intent is for the APC bylaw that's been presented to provide the ability for staff to record minutes if necessary. If the APC is, not willing to do that themselves, I think that staff would. The intent is that certainly that staff would be made available to support APCs where that capacity is needed.
Okay, thank you. Director Wilson.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. It's an interesting point here because my understanding was that the staff would attend regardless. Now, we've asked this question before, I'm certain of it, because as far as I'm concerned, we in my APC certainly have full ability to take those minutes, but we were, perhaps I've got it wrong, I don't know, but my understanding is that we couldn't do it without a member of staff taking the minutes.
Mr. Chiroff.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So you have to forgive me because I wasn't present when the committee discussed the APC bylaw that went forward at committee. I know that there was some discussion about staff presence at meetings. Certainly it's or my expressed wish that staff would attend all APC meetings. And certainly if that is the committee and the board's desire, then we will see to make that happen to the extent possible.
Okay, Director Kuhn.
Yeah, I seem to remember that we concluded that staff attend the meetings and take the minutes. That's what I seem to remember, and that would make it easier for everybody, I think, because then you get minutes that are the same with every area basically, and we don't have these misunderstandings. Oh, there should be more comments, there should be less, or whatever. So we can kind of coordinate it then.
Yep, Director Martman.
Over the weekend, I had the pleasure and privilege to go on a New England speaking tour with an elder, a New England speaking elders tour, and one of the things they talked about was oral history and understanding what transpired. And I asked them, so how will we know? And he says, well, all of you will have to come back so you'll understand what the history was. So I thank Director Kuhn, because I think it is about all of us coming back and saying, this is what we understand is what's happening. So I think I take my hat off to the elder that helped me learn that. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Martman. I'll just say I was on that tour as well, and you've done exactly what the elder requested, which was to practice that. So good on you. Any other comments? No? Okay, thank you for that discussion, everyone. So we'll now move to the next item. Please, Ms. Legault.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. IN2 is correspondence from Vancouver Island Economic Alliance regarding the latest from VIEA for information.
Okay, any comments on that? Okay, everyone's fine with that. We'll then move to the next item, please, Ms. Legault.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. IN3 is a letter dated March 23rd, 2022 from WIMAC Tel on behalf of TELUS regarding the removal of the TELUS payphone at Aitken and Fraser and Shawnigan Lake for information.
Okay, thank you. Director Martman.
and I thought I would have to. Let me know if I need to take my video off.
It's okay
I thought
right
I'd
now.
have to line up behind other speakers for this one. I guess not. So, does anybody? Can anybody? Any staff give me the background to this letter? Because this is the first one I have seen of payphones being removed, and so I'd like to see if the staff have any thoughts on this.
Good question. Any staffer up to speed on payphone removal? Ms. Charoff.
So thank you, Mr. Chair. So this obviously doesn't come up that often because I don't think there are that many payphones remaining, but there's a federal process and standards around payphone removal. So there are providers required to provide notifications to local government and I believe publish a notice in the local paper if the CVRD wishes to, I think, contest the removal. We could certainly forward those comments, and if the CVRD wanted to do some more advertising around the removal of the payphone, that is also an option for the CVRD.
Director Martman.
So thank you very much, because coming from an emergency background, payphones have always been that last resort for 911. Not only do they work when there's any disaster going on, despite no power, it could be an earthquake, it could be a hurricane, it could be a tsunami, whatever. These phones will continue to work, and they don't cost you anything to call 911. That alone, in Katrina, they were lined up at the public payphone to be able to phone out and get hold of people, get hold of family. During 9/11 in New York, the same thing was happening. The public payphone was that way to communicate outwards. But there's other uses for that may not be so apparent. And one of them is about vulnerable people that don't have a phone. How do they make a phone call to somebody? Yes, it may cost some money, but even 25 cents or $1 or whatever it may cost for a payphone, it is an avenue for vulnerable people. It also provides anonymity. If you want to report a domestic abuse case, or you want to be able to do something, here's a phone that isn't linked to your name. I don't know if many of us in this world today have that luxury of having be able to have a phone that's actually not linked to your name. And I think the other piece is really a bit about resiliency, and we take something like this out of the community, and I think we take a little bit of the resiliency of that community away. So anyways, I guess I wondered why they actually sent this letter out, and now I realize why, because it's an opportunity for us to actually say, I think that this should remain. The last standing payphone should be there. So I speak in contesting or suggesting or putting forward that a payphone has a value to community, and we should be supporting it staying there. Thank you.
Okay, Director Martman. So I'll go to Director Atkin, but we'll come back to you if you do want to try a motion to that effect. So, Director Atkin.
Yeah, thanks. I think I recall it's a 90-day notice, I think. And we have I'm not sure that I don't know that I have an opinion as strong as Director Martman's. And I'd rather hear from the community if it's something that we want to preserve, maybe for those reasons, or maybe even as an attraction, because it'll be like one of the last ones standing. But so I guess if we could use a small budget to notify the public that this request has come out and this notification. So then if we hear from the community either way, then we'd have a better idea of making the decision. Because personally, I'm not, I don't know about the rest of you, if you're attached to the outcome or not. But I think it's something that we could put out to the community. And I would suggest that we, at the very least, put an ad in our local newspaper in Shawnigan Lake. and perhaps and then an ad on the CVRD page in the Citizen.
Okay.
So if I have, I don't know if Mr. Rolfe just needs a motion to that effect, or I guess, and if people want to go down the route that Director Martman's talking about, we can do that too.
Okay, Mr. Rolfe, and then I'll go to Director Shani DiNardo and Nicholson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So just for clarification, the notification period is 60 days. And in terms of the CVRD placing a notice, I think an option there would be just simply to use your electoral area budget, the director's expenses for that purpose. But yes, a resolution to that effect would be appreciated.
Okay, thank you. Director Yanni DiNardo.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. I didn't think there would be that much of a conversation on this subject at all, but after hearing Director Martman, it does bring up some interesting conversations and preparedness, vulnerable people. So yeah, I would, and I'd like to hear from that community. I'm not sure if any of us even have a payphone left, and I have not been informed if they were taking any away in my area. They've all just disappeared. So, yeah, thanks.
And we do have one left in Mill Bay. I have Director Nicholson and then Director Kuhn.
Thank you. Yes, I had thought about the equity side, but I hadn't thought about the other points that Director Martman raised, and I think they're very important. I'm noticing in this letter that it's going to be removed on or after April 25th. So I would be interested if we wanted to canvass the community further or whatever. I still think we need to let them know, because once it's gone, it probably will be very difficult to get it back. So I would be in favor of notifying TELUS prior to April 25th that we're not in support of it, and we would like more time to perhaps canvass the community.
Okay, thank you. Director Kuhn.
Well, I think it would be interesting to know how many times has that phone been used. I mean, if it turns out that maybe there's 2 calls a year placed, then it becomes obvious, well, are we going to spend money for those 2 calls? Are they that important? So I think that would be interesting to know if they have a statistic or whatever. Because if it is actually being used now, then, well, that's a whole different story. But I doubt it. I don't think people use them anymore.
Okay, thank you. Director Martman.
Thank you. I gather these are not used much, and it says so in the letter. And I don't think that, from my perspective, that's actually the point. It is about taking something out of the community, but I also thought that there was a process that's available for people to say we don't want to have it removed. I don't think the cost is actually to the local government. The issue of maintaining these really is up to the corporation that provides telecommunications. And I believe the CRTC has ruled on, that they do have a benefit, but the local governments need to speak up to sort of say, hey, that benefit, we don't want it removed. We see the benefit, and then it's up to the telecommunication community to decide. It's their role to pay for it and provide it. So I don't think it's a cost to the local government.
Okay, thank you. Director Acton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Director Martman. I think you make some valid, really good points, but I do hear some, I think. So I think what we might do here is ask staff to clarify some of those points and to get any statistics that they can, and for us to place an ad or share that letter of the removal and ask for comment from the community. So those 3 things, if I've missed anything, please let me know, but that's my motion.
Okay, so maybe I'll just check in with staff. Mr. Rolfe, is that suitable? Do you want that seconded or?
Mr. Chair, is the committee requesting that staff come back to EAFC on the 20th, or would you like us to provide information to the board, just looking at the timelines?
I think either one is fine. Once you have the information, if you can, because you're right, we're in a time crunch.
Which would be fastest, Mr. Oath?
I think if we were to follow up at the board.
Is that okay with you?
Either one is fine.
Okay. Well, you move that. Is there a seconder? Director Martman. Okay. So further discussion on that. Director Morrison.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think Director Nicholson had made a point earlier about writing to tell us and asking them to, postpone the removal if while we make these inquiries and investigations. I think that might be something to include in the resolution or a subsequent resolution.
Yes, I see Director Acton nodding. So
yeah, I would second that motion, if that's a second motion, to maybe ask for 30-day extension.
Okay.
I think that would be fine.
Ms. Legault, are you getting this in a coherent way? Don't know how we're doing.
So there was already a motion on the floor, so I'm assuming that Director Morrison is making this as an amendment to the main motion. And Director Acton seconded that, so it would be a vote on the amendment and then on the motion as amended.
Okay. So we should we do that now, then the vote on the amendment? All in favor? Opposed? Okay. So now we go to the motion as amended. Maybe Ms. Legault, could you read that so we're clear?
I don't have it completely formulated, but essentially it was to ask staff to clarify some of the points raised during the discussion, request statistics on use, and place an advertisement sharing information about the removal and asking for public comment.
That's your intent, Director Acton? Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, let's call the question on that then. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries.
Mr. Chair, can I interrupt, please? The person who was trying to give input during public input was in the lobby, and then they waited, and I think they were just kicked out of the lobby. So they are available. Can we take 5 minutes and get them reconnected?
Yeah, I think that would make sense since he didn't have a chance. Should we do that now? Is there a little nodding? Can we amend the agenda and have them back in? Ms. Legault, would that work?
It's up to the committee.
Okay, I see nodding. Okay, very good.
So do they use the same link, or how does that work? Yeah, okay. Thank you so much.
So do they need are they coming right now, Director Acton, or?
Yeah.
I heard something there. I don't see anyone new on the screen. No. Well, should we take a 5-minute break, give them a chance to get on? See everyone back here at 2:05. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, they're calling me again. Hi. She's saying she got in and that she has restricted access. And then nothing. And then does it boot you out?
Ms. Legault.
She's saying she got in and that she
Video's live.
access.
Okay, thank you. Welcome back, everyone.
And nothing. And then does it boot you out?
A little bit of technical. We can hear you, Director Atkin. Press your mute. We'll have to carry on with the next item, and then we'll see if we can, if our caller does show up, we can insert her at an appropriate point. We can hear you, Director Atkin. Nope. Now I've got feedback. We'll have to carry on with the next item, and then we'll see if we can. Oh, there we are. Okay. See, we have some guests with us now.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. These are the applicants for item R1. Item R1 is the report from Development Services Division regarding DVP 21G02 for Chemainus Road, and the proposed recommendation is that it be recommended to the board that development variance permit number DVP 21G02 be issued subject to receiving a landscape security bond, and the applicants are in the room.
Great, welcome. And do we have a staff report on this first? Ms. Wright?
Yes, thank you very much. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, you're coming in loud and clear. Thank you.
Perfect. And Mr. Tippett will be doing the slides for me, so I'll be asking him to change the slides. So this is DVP 21G02 for Lot 6 Chemainus Road. There are two variances being requested, which include to increase the height and decrease the watercourse setback for the development of a single-family dwelling. It's a vacant oceanfront parcel which has never been developed, and it's located on the east side of Chemainus Road. The parcel is approximately 0.073 hectares in size and is steeply sloped towards the oceanfront. Next slide, please. So before I really get into the details, I wanted to provide some context of the parcel with these images. So as I mentioned, that the parcel is significantly sloped, and there's a small flat portion of land adjacent to Chemainus Road, which you can see here. So then it drops steeply down from a 16-meter elevation to 4-meter elevation in a distance of 17 meters, which equals a 70% slope on the majority of the lot. Then there's a gently sloping bench of land about 2/3 of the way down, which ends in a eroded cut bank that then drops again to the foreshore of the ocean. So the first photo on the left is looking at the parcel from Chemainus Road, and right after those cars, it basically starts to drop down. The second photo on the right is taken from that bench I was talking about 2/3 of the way down the slope, looking down to the remaining oceanfront portion of the parcel. Next slide, please. So the photo on the left in this case is taken from that same lower bench about 2/3 of the way down, now looking up the parcel towards Chemainus Road. So as I said, the lot has never been developed, so it's never been cleared as well, and this is the original vegetation. So it's not really clear how steep the slope really is with the vegetation blocking it. And the photo on the right is looking at the flat portion of the parcel at the base adjacent to the ocean. Next slide, please. So the applicants are proposing to construct about 1,600 square foot, 2.5 story single family dwelling with living space on the main floor and a storage area in the upper mezzanine. The house will be constructed on a central concrete column that will be cantilevered out over the slope towards the ocean. So the dwelling will appear as a 1.5 story structure from Chemainus Road. However, the building height is defined in the zoning bylaw as being measured as the vertical distance from the average existing grade at the perimeter of the building to the highest point of the structure. Therefore, due to the extreme elevation changes and the way the building height is measured, the applicants are seeking to increase the height of the proposed dwelling from 7.5 meters to 11.3 meters, which represents a variance of 3.8 meters. The next slide, please. So as shown on this site plan, the two orange arrows point out the line of the deck edge and the line of the wall edge above, which are suspended over the ocean shoreline area. The green arrow shows the 15-meter watercourse setback from the ocean shoreline. A retaining wall will physically encroach into the watercourse setback. However, it should be noted that the portion of the house and the entire deck will encroach into the aerial space of the setback. However, no portion of the house or deck will physically encroach on the ground into the setback area. So the applicants are asking or requesting to decrease the setback from the watercourse from 15 meters to 6.5 meters, which represents a variance of 8.12 meters. There's a geotechnical report which was attached to the application which states that the slope will not be subject to geohazard during a seismic occurrence. In order to meet the guidelines of the Ocean Shoreline DPA, a replanting plan was submitted to offset any possible permanent and temporary encroachment into the DPA and waterfront setback area. The plan proposed to restore as much of the area as possible with native plantings and following the completion of the development. So in this case, a landscape bond will be required as a condition of the application. So due to the small size of the parcel and the steepness of the slope, staff are recommending approval of the application, subject to receiving a landscape security bond. And I would like to note that the owners of the parcel are in attendance and are available to answer any of the questions. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Ms. Wright. So before we turn to the applicants, any questions for staff? Director Yoni DiNardo.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Chair, through you to Ms. Wright. Could you show me on this screen where the actual septic field can go on this property, where it is going to go?
Yes, through to the chair. Thank you. So Mr. Tippett is in charge of the cursor there. So I'll have to say, so right at the front of the property along Chemainus Road is the only flat portion of land. So and they are just meeting the 7.5 meter required front yard setback. So in that space will be the septic system as well as the driveway to lead into the garage.
Thank you. And the water, how is the water service there? Is that community or?
I believe so. However, I can't remember. The applicants might want to chime in.
Yes, community serviced water, yes.
Community water, okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, other questions for staff? Director Nicholson.
Thank you. I am wondering if the applicants were made aware of that very interesting hazard report that Ms. Miller presented to us a few meetings ago for this area.
Okay, maybe I'll turn to the applicants now then.
No, we're not aware of any report that.
Okay, thank you. Follow-up, Director Nicholson.
Well, I'm not quite sure where I want to go with this. My understanding is that we have the report talked about fairly serious hazard issues along that coastal bluff area, and I recognize that they have done an engineering have had an engineering structural report done, but I think that the report that Ms. Miller did may raise additional questions. And so my understanding is that that is not part of our current OCP, but so as a result, it would not be brought forward for consideration until you actually get to the building stage. And I think that the investment in this kind of a site on drawings and so forth is significant without thinking through the whole potential risk. So I'm just raising it. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I see Ms. Cherolf had her hand up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So that's correct. The staff haven't had an opportunity to bring forward the amendments to DP7. That will be coming to, I believe it's the next Electoral Area Services Committee meeting. But in advance of that, the information is available and usable by our building inspectors. And certainly in this case, there has been a site-specific geotechnical assessment done, and that is what we would be referring to through a DPA process. So I do not believe that should have significant influence on what the applicants are proposing in this case, or the outcome of the geotechnical report. But certainly if the building inspection department feels that more information is needed, they can look at that at building inspection, and we're certainly able to give that information to the applicants and to their geotechnical professionals just so they can verify what they have.
Thank you. Director Smith.
Thank you. I have a question for staff. In the geotechnical field review, I noticed in the comments here, it says for conservatism, the stability evaluation was completed without consideration of the buttressing effect that would occur by the position of the proposed structure. To me, that indicates that the geotech is not indicating that this structure, they're not saying whether this structure can actually be put on this parcel because it's without consideration. Can you please clarify that?
That's right.
Through to the chair, I can't speak for the engineer, and we do rely on the professional reliance model. So that engineering report was taken at face value from the engineer who signed and sealed it. However, I do know that the applicants gave their exact building plans to the engineer and worked closely with the engineer to come up with these plans to begin with. So the wording in that might, I can see how it could be a little misconstrued. However, the applicants have been pretty diligent on working on having all of their supporting professionals work together to come up with this plan and create it as a whole.
Okay, I see Mr. Tippett has joined us.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm not an expert either, but I suspect what the engineer who wrote that report meant is the central pylon or pillar that will be supporting the structure will have a slope retention side benefit against the slope. In other words, it will buttress the slope, but his analysis of the stability of the slope did not take account of that additional safety margin that the building, once constructed, would provide to the retention of the slope. That's my understanding of what's meant by that.
Okay, Director Smith. Okay, maybe this would be a good time to turn to the applicants. Ask if you have anything to add. Oh, sorry, I forgot, Director Martman, but do you want to go now? Or
that was a question for staff.
Okay, go ahead.
And thank you, and through to staff. I was just trying to understand the construction phase of this, because I think I read in your staff report that there's going to be beach access for equipment. And so maybe you can just walk me through sort of the construction part, because from my understanding, it's really going to impact the total part of the DPA 15-meter setback is going to be totally uprooted and changed. So.
Correct. So through to the chair, to Director Martman, and maybe the applicants can help me a little on this. So yes, the DPA Ocean Shoreline Development Permit area will be impacted throughout the entire construction process. The environmental assessment plan, or the environmental management plan, does outline how, provisions that can be in place, for instance, using thick mats for construction equipment too, so that some roots won't be impacted as much, things like that. However, that's why the replanting plan is there, is to then replant everything that was removed or destroyed during the construction process. The applicants, I believe, have an easement or an agreement with their neighbors to the east, so they can access, who are more at the ocean level and don't have a steep slope to work with, so they can access through their driveway and their yard to gain access to the waterfront, so they can build from the waterfront up, as opposed to using cranes at the street level on Chemainus Road to build down. But I would appreciate it if the applicants can help a little on discussing the construction, or how the construction will proceed.
Go ahead, please, if the applicants would like to add to that.
Okay, our neighbors to the southeast do have access around, and we do have their permission to bring equipment through their yard and onto the bottom of the lot. There will be nothing done from the beachfront or on the ocean front whatsoever. I don't know what I can add to that.
Our biologist also has a plan in place to remediate
Remediate
the whole project with native species to restore and enhance the habitat value. Also, she has a plan that we do it in off season, so there's not as much erosion or anything, or if there's any erosion happening or anything like that during the dry season. Say mats to cover tree roots. What else was there? It was in her 38-page report.
Okay.
She's quite precise and has several good suggestions, which we intend to implement.
Good, thank you. So follow up, Director Martman?
Yes, thank you for and I know that report that you're referring to, it's a summary. I just wanted to quote from it. There are negative impacts to the environment, and then it goes on to say that if all mitigation.
Sorry, Director Martman, your audio is fading. Maybe, yeah, thank you. Sorry, Director Martman, we still can't hear you. Oh dear. Okay, we'll have to come back to him. Director Acton, go ahead, please.
Thank you. I know this isn't really
Sorry, Director Acton, I see we've got Director Martman. Do you want to, can we hear you now? No. Okay, sorry. Go ahead, Director Acton.
I guess I'm curious to know if there's public access. Like, is this like a public beach right in front of their place? Unfortunately, I'm sorry, I don't know the area very well. And or is it just beach when the tide is out? And if there is public use?
There is beach when the tide is out, and there is public use. So there's an oyster.
So when the tide is in, there's no beach. It's not walkable.
I imagine parts of it are walkable. I'm not 100% sure every day that it's accessible.
There's an assortment of different size rocks directly out front, and when the tide goes out, there's a mud/sand sort of area out the front. I guess people would be more inclined to walk along the mud sand than the actual rock beach.
Okay. So I don't see any other hands. I don't know if the applicants, did you have general comments that you'd like to tell us about? Or anything further you'd like to add?
Well, I just don't know this process at all, and don't know what to add.
We have
Okay,
we have contacted numerous, as it says in the letter, professionals to guide us through all this. Some of them are quite renowned. The fellow that's designing the septic system is Ian Ralston. He wrote the book, I believe, on septic systems in BC. We've had other engineers. The biologist actually is Sarah Bonner. She's very well known and respected. So we've consulted a good network of people here to help support us and do this project. And
good,
we've
okay.
done the best of our ability to make this happen in an environmentally sensitive way, as well as
Making sure it's done right.
done right. Yes, that's what it boils down to.
Okay, perfect. Well, thank you. So I have directors Martman, Kuhn, and Smith. Director
Can you
Martman.
hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. Sorry. I was just, you mentioned that report, and I just wanted some clarity. This may be a question to staff, but it does say, and I may paraphrase a little bit, but there are negative impacts to the environment, but if all mitigation measures are implemented, these are reduced. And so I guess through the staff, what happens if something goes wrong in the construction process, because they are working just above the beach and they're working on the DPA area, and so just trying to understand that part.
So, thank you. Through to the chair, to Director Martman. So through the development process, the biologist or the professional is always on call for anything like that can happen. And they would be relied upon at that point to provide the professional opinion on how to proceed. We hope that it doesn't happen, but that is why. And so the remediation plan for after the construction is there in order to remediate the site to the best of the ability because it can never be returned to what it originally was. However, it would be to help the site prosper with plants after the building process has taken place.
So just to follow up, so any liabilities such as contamination of the foreshore, contamination of the DPA, anything like that would be a responsibility of the builders or the property owner. I'm not sure who would be responsible.
The contractor will have insurance, and so will the homeowners have insurance to protect whoever needs protecting in case of a failure.
The emphasis is really on prevention, as Sarah Bonner said in her reports too, like make sure no machines are leaking any oil and all sort of things. Check
Yes.
I mean, be as conscientious as we can.
Okay, thank you. So Directors Kuhn, Smith, and Yanni DiNardo. Director Kuhn.
I have a question for staff. I don't know if they can answer that. Do we have any experience with buildings that are built over the riparian area, where in fact the building footings are actually outside the riparian area, but the building extends over the riparian area? But my concern is, and I wonder if something like that would set a precedent. If somebody now, and it might, I imagine it could very well be the first building built in that way. And my concern is that maybe others will have a look at this and say, okay, well, if we want to have a bigger building, bigger footprint, maybe we'll just extend over the riparian area. And before you know, there would be building after building possibly go up over riparian areas because some of the lots are too small or too steep or whatnot, so that the property owners could get proper use out of their property. And I have a bit of a concern that maybe that would set kind of a trend or whatever, and I'm uncertain. Do we have any experience if any building like that has been built in the CVRD?
One for staff.
Yeah.
Mr. Tibbet.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's actually in the town of Ladysmith. I live not too far from this site. I live on Gill Road in Ladysmith, and just down the road from me, a lady named Jennifer Forrest, who used to work for the CVRD, has a house that's structurally it's different than this one, but it's stepped down the slope very much the same. It's from Cheminas Road. It looks like actually one story more or less, and then I believe the building is like 3 stories down towards the beach, and it was built probably in the 1960s, I would say. And it's pretty much a similar context to this site. They really didn't have a flat area to build on, and so there is a precedent in that sense. I'm not sure about the specific design, but certainly using a difficult site has happened before, and it's not too. It's a couple of kilometers up the road from this site, I guess. As far as precedent value, I think for that, what we have to look at here is the question of the site's been zoned for residential use for many decades probably, and hasn't been buildable up until these owners came up with this particular proposal. But when we look at precedent value, we have to ask ourselves how many more sites like this are there, particularly in Saltaire, but maybe in other communities. And I can't actually think of that many along, the shoreline that remain unbuilt to this day. I don't think it would be a widespread precedent if it were approved. In fact, I think there's arguably a hardship involved in terms, at least, of the building height issue, because it's really hard to, get the use that the regional district has allocated to that site for many years on that site without a height variance, at least. So those are my quick comments. Hope that helps.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Director Smith?
Thank you. I was going to bring a motion forward, and if Lori had something to say first, then.
Okay, Director Yanni DiNardo?
Yeah, thank you so much. Through you, I think it would be for staff. I know that we have to rely and of course, all the professionals that have been involved in this. So that's who we rely on. Who will follow up on the remediation and follow for the landscape? Who's responsible for that, and who will be reporting in on that?
That's right.
Through to the chair. So we will be taking the landscape bond, which is a 2-year process at minimum. So after the plantings are in place, the applicants are eligible to request a partial refund of the bond, and then we hold the remainder for a period of time until we for I think it's another 2 years. And that at that point, the professional, in this case, the registered biologist, will need to go back to the site and submit a letter to the CVRD confirming that the plantings are still in place and they're still of good quality and are alive, essentially. Once the CVRD does get that letter, we then go to the site to confirm that the plantings are still in place. And at that point, that the applicant can submit a request in writing to development staff to receive the remainder of their bond.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So Director Smith.
Thank you. We have received letters from residents within that area that have asked that this be denied, and the Advisory Planning Commission for Area G has also indicated they feel this should be denied. I'd like to bring forward the motion, option 2, that it be recommended to the board that development variance permit number DVP 21G02, Lot 6, Chemainus Road, PID 005946301 be denied.
Okay, that's been moved. Do we have a seconder? Seconded. Okay, any discussion?
Mr. Chair, may I speak?
Oh, Director Morrison, please do.
Thank you. Just very quickly, I seem to recall a approved variance for a property not that long ago in Creekside in Director Coon's area, where I believe we approved a variance for a cantilevered overhang for a deck into a either a side yard setback or riparian area, and that was a design. I think in the case of this, I don't think I'm comfortable supporting the resolution that's on the floor, because I think there is a fairly extreme circumstance of hardship here. It's almost an unbuildable lot, and I'd like to see the applicants perhaps have an opportunity to address some of the concerns that have been raised by not only neighbors and the APC. So I won't support this resolution.
Thank you, Director Morrison. Any other comments? Director Smith.
Thank you. We are looking at Area G's zoning bylaws, and it states that no building or structure shall be located within 15 meters of the high water mark or any water course, including the sea. And in Solitaire, we feel that that's extremely important. The protection of those areas, we continue to support no buildings in those areas, and this is very important. And also the height, the additional height of 3.8 meters, and is an extreme height addition for that area from the water. It will look like one big solid wall going up, and this was something that the commission brought forward, indicating the look of a wall on that property. So I still support, and I ask my fellow directors to support my motion. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Further comments, Director Yanni DiNardo, and then Nicholson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wondering, I think that because of this actual lot, and with all of the professionals that have been involved, there would be no other way to build on it. I don't think. It's just this is an extreme case, but they have done a lot of the due diligence. anyway, I just wanted to make that comment.
Okay, thank you, Director Nicholson.
Yes, I would like to thank the applicants for doing such a good job. We don't always see such thorough applications. I also like to say that if we'd done the right thing whenever this was subdivided, this lot would never exist. And I certainly hope our MOCP addresses, our modernized OCP addresses this kind of a problem, because it is just to me, it just seems like a very high risk proposition. But I also know that, and this is a question for staff, I also know that people have a right, when they have a piece of property, to use it, to develop it as they within the terms of the regulations. But if the regulations don't suit the site, there is a hardship clause. So my question to staff is, how do we know that this is the only thing that can be done on this site? And is there an opportunity, if for some reason we chose to vote this down, is there another way around for this couple to go perhaps to the Board of Variance or whatever, who can look at it from a practical point of view, a homeowner's point of view?
Okay, question for staff.
Through to the chair. So this was the only design that was proposed to staff. So this is what we are bringing forward. But in terms of another avenue, so if the application is denied today, the applicants do have the ability to apply to the Board of Variance and submit a rationale as to why they believe there's hardship on the lot, and why they believe that this application meets the definition or meets the hardship rationale, and they could appeal to the Board of Variance with that.
Okay. Thank you. Director Acton?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I do believe that this applicant has done a lot of work, and they've been quite innovative on how to try and make this lot work. But I am concerned about the community that actually lives there. We have the APC who recommended denial. So I guess I'm wondering, is it a matter of, could this application just be reworked? I would hate for them to lose all the momentum and the work that's gone into this already. As Director Nicholson has pointed out, it's quite extensive and would be quite expensive to get where they are right now. I wonder if there's a way, like I feel uncomfortable going against the community wishes at this point. I don't know the area well, and I respect the director of the area, knowing she knows well what her community values are. And I guess, is there a way for us to perhaps, just send this back to be reworked and looked at where the community could support this a little better?
Okay, that's a question to staff. Ms. Churl.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So certainly the committee has the option to consider referring the report back to staff to have a discussion with the applicants as to whether or not they are willing or able to modify the proposal, and to come back to committee if they are in fact able to modify their proposal. So that opportunity does exist, and that would be a referral motion.
Okay. Director Smith.
Yes, I think a referral back to staff would also give the applicants an opportunity to see the coastal shoreline stability assessment, that report that was done, and they could possibly work with the building inspector department along with land use, to go over that. And that would clarify maybe some things for all of us. So is it possible to remove or we can just refer it back? Is that correct? Thank you.
I'll just check with Ms. Legault.
A motion to refer is in order.
Okay. So it's been moved and seconded. Okay. Director Morrison, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I was just hoping to get a quick comment in before the referral was to happen. So just so I'm clear, like I think we received some input from a community member that was concerned about the septic system, and from what I read in the reports, it was clear that there was professional engineering brought to bear to design a system that is to meet the standards. So when we talk about the referral back to staff, I'm just hoping we could give some clarity, not just to staff, but to the applicants that are online today, as to, you know, what is it that we are thinking is the issues that we'd like to have them address? Is it the, you know, the view from the water side and the design look? Is it the overall height? Is it the amount of intrusion into with the cantilever over top of the shoreline setback? It'd be nice if we can give them a little bit of clarity as to what they're looking for. That's all. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Director Smith?
Thank you, Director Morrison. That is very helpful. I think that when staff takes the referral, it would be to look at the inclusion into the setback for the water course and the height restriction, and that would be appreciated. I think it's to work with the building permit department also, and to also provide access to the coastline shore stability assessment that has been done and the impacts. Is that sufficient for staff for direction?
Nodding from Ms. Wright. Okay. I did see the applicant had a hand up. Would you like to add something?
Me? Oh, okay.
Go ahead, please. Yes.
Building inspectors.
When we were drawing up this design, it didn't just appear. It was brought before the building inspection department to see if they had any issues with it at all. There was none brought forward to us anyway. And we've repeatedly asked everybody that we knew was going to be involved in making the decisions on this project if they wanted to meet with us on the lot. It's the easiest thing to do.
Right.
You can see what the issues are.
Yeah, we spoke to.
See what we've done to mitigate them.
Yes. As far as landscaping and view of the actual project from the water, we'll have all the new plantings in place. I mean, landscaping, you could easily put latticing up that column, which I plan to do, and grow clematis in that. It'll just blend in with the rest of the greenery. And I really hope that we don't get delayed too much, because there's only so much of the year that we can actually start an excavation. If we get too far along this year, we're stuck for another however long. So it's
okay.
We've really done all our homework.
Good to have a resolution one way or another.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you. Appreciate those comments. Director Morrison.
Yeah, thank you. And just for clarity of process, I think that everybody here, or I think we recognize you've got a real tough spot to build in, and I, for one, wouldn't want to see a denial impose a 1 year delay in you being able to reapply with the new design. So I think that Director Smith has referred this to give you the best crack at trying to come a little closer to meeting some of the committee's needs, and I'll support the referral motion. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, everyone. Seeing no further questions, I'd like to call the question on the referral, please. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, and thank you to the applicants for joining. So we will now, why don't we take a 10-minute break before we go on to item R2. So see everyone at 2:56, please.
Quick, what does the referral mean?
Video's live.
Okay, thank you. Welcome back, everyone. So let's turn to the next item on the agenda, please, Ms. Legault.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Item R2 is a report from Development Services regarding application ALR 21B01, and the proposed recommendation is that it be recommended to the board that the application be forwarded to the Agricultural Land Commission, and I have admitted the applicant, Mr. Elliott, to the meeting.
Okay, thank you. Welcome, Mr. Elliott. And Ms. Wright, go ahead, please.
Thank you very much. So if we could go to the next slide, please. So this is an Agricultural Land Commission application for a non-farm use removal of soil application to update an aggregate extraction plan for operations at 1715 and 1745 Thane Road in Area B. Next slide, please. The parcels are located on the northeast side of Thane Road in the Leaside Road intersection, and together, for the sake of consistency with the report and for this application, we'll refer to both properties together as the site. And the site has a total area of about 6.5 hectares. As shown on the maps, there's a triangular wedge in the north portion of the site, which is designated renewable resource forestry, zoned primary forestry, and not within the ALR. The remainder of the site is designated a renewable resource agricultural, zoned primary agricultural, and is within the ALR. Next slide, please. So it's important to note with this application that the portion of the site applicable to the application is located within the ALR and is Act as well as the Mines Act. The CBRD is a referral agency for this application, which we received through the ALC portal, and therefore staff did not send out additional external referral requests for this application. So the initial aggregate extraction plan for the site was approved by the CBRD and the Agricultural Land Commission and has been ongoing since 1999 for the improvement of limitations to land capability for agriculture that affected the site. There is currently a mining permit issued by the Ministry of Energy, Mines and Low Carbon Innovation, which permits aggregate extraction, and this was issued in 1999 and remains active today. Overall, this application is to update the aggregate extraction plan to close the mine and return the site to usable farm land. The closure proceedings are expected through to 2026. The closure plan is phased, where the lands will be cleared, rehabilitated, and leveled in order to establish a tie-in grade and elevation to integrate the mine site with the surrounding unaltered land. So essentially filling in the holes from the mine and make a flatter site. In the photos pictured, you can see the active mine site. So the first photo to the left is standing on a pile of soil that's been moved to the south end of the site, looking down on the mine. Over in the corner, on that photo on the left, in kind of the northwest corner, was where we were standing, where the second photo was taken looking down onto the active mine site as well. So approximately 5 hectares of disturbed land due to gravel extraction, as detailed in the initial aggregate extraction plan from 1999, has occurred. So the initial aggregate extraction plan permitted the extraction of 395,800 cubic meters of gravel within the ALR portion of the site. To date, approximately 305,000 cubic meters have been extracted. Sorry about that. The south portion of the site contains the original soil stockpile that was removed and that we were standing on for that first photo. That soil stockpile was removed from the middle portion of the site to permit the gravel extraction. This portion of the site will also be subject to land clearing and closure, which will increase the soil classification from the existing Class 5P stoniness and Class 4A aridity limitations to attain agricultural land capability of Class 2A aridity limitation. As noted in the staff report, unauthorized importation of soil occurred on the ALR portion of 1745 Thane Road from approximately 2012 to 2014. This predates the adoption of the CBRD soil deposit bylaw, which was originally adopted in 2019. The updated aggregate extraction plan notes that these imported soils were opportunistically sourced and salvaged topsoil of suitable quality that was stockpiled and cover cropped for the purpose of rehabilitation. The updated plan states that no further stockpiling is scheduled to occur. I'd also like to point out that if this soil was imported today, that the CVRD soil deposit bylaw states that soil to be deposited as part of the reclamation of a mine as authorized under the Mines Act is exempt from requiring a soil deposit permit. So this current application is to update the aggregate extraction plan for operations that have extended beyond the original estimated operational lifetime and to include the salvaged imported soil stockpile into the plan. The aggregate extraction is planned to end in 2026. The updated aggregate extraction closure plan is to update the ALC of the current status and the planned rehabilitation and closure schedule. Overall, once complete, there should be approximately 4 hectares of prime agricultural land on the site. Staff recommend that the application be forwarded to the ALC, who will determine if the aggregate extraction and closure plan is in compliance with the ALC Act and regulations. And as Ms. Legault noted, the agent for the application, who is also the author of the aggregate extraction plan, is here with us and able to answer any questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Wright. So why don't we go to questions for staff first, and then we'll hear from Mr. Elliott. Any questions for Ms. Wright? Director Wilson.
Yeah, if it's any consolation to you, Lauren, I have the same trouble with hundreds of thousands as well. All those zeros confuse the hell out of me. Sorry, the heck out of me. I'm a little bit concerned about some of the things that you said here, like, for instance, unauthorized importation of soil. And then explain to me what this actually means here, where it says the updated AEP states that this soil was opportunistically sourced and salvaged topsoil of suitable quality that was stockpiled and cover cropped for the purpose of rehabilitation. That's a lot of things which sort of contradict each other there. First of all, what does of suitable quality mean? How is that determined? And what does cover cropped for the purpose of rehabilitation mean?
That's right.
So through to the chair, to Director Wilson, I do believe that this that information was taken from the original report, so it would be best if Thomas Elliott, the agent for the applicants, could appropriately respond.
Is
okay, Mr. Elliott.
To Councillor Wilson via the chair, respectfully. The points that were raised being definition of opportunistically salvaged being a first point, the second point being of suitable quality, the third point being cover cropped. And I suppose that there should have been a semicolon or perhaps even a dash in that sentence to separate the subject there, because all of those preceding activities were for rehabilitation purposes. So to address those 3 different points, opportunistically salvaged. The opportunistic salvage of topsoil typically occurs through development. Most large-scale development, be it residential, commercial, or road building purposes, sees the removal of the upper layer or organic rich topsoil for reclamation or repurposing into commercial purposes through bagging and then sale at your local retailer. But in this case, the company that was providing excavation services, GT Excavating, is associated with the farm operators of this land. So they did have an opportunity to salvage any topsoils that were not being otherwise utilized and would have to go for disposal somewhere, thus reducing the overall cost of the development program and increasing the topsoil volume available for rehabilitation of this particular mine site. The second point being suitable quality. Suitable quality is actually a defined term within the Agricultural Land Commission documentation, and it typically means a class 1, 2, or 3 soil containing less than 5% coarse fragments, being rocks and stones, and also has suitable soil moisture holding capacity such that it will not incur a substantial, i.e. class 4 or above, limitation to agriculture. And the last one, cover cropping. Cover cropping was done for both erosion and erosion and transport or sediment mobilization purposes, but also to encourage biotic action within the soil as it has been stockpiled. And we do want to keep those soils alive as they are waiting their next use.
Good. That's good. Thank you, Mr. Elliott. Could I have a follow-up, please, Mr. Chair?
Yes, you may.
Can I go back to the suitable quality part of it there? I'm assuming then that there would have been some kind of examination of the soils as well to make sure that it was environmentally safe as well. And were there any reports on that, or was it just well, what do we have in documentation about the suitable quality aspect?
So the opportunistically salvaged topsoil was taken from native and virgin sites, so there was no need for those activities.
Okay. And one final point, if I could, Mr. Chair. One of the things that that was mentioned by the staff just now was, if I got this right, and I was looking for it in the report and I couldn't find it there, that there was no need for something to do with the way that the Mines Act was written, that they could bring this stuff in regardless of what is sold. Is that did I hear that correct, Lauren? If you could repeat that one for me.
Correct. So through to the chair, the province has exclusive jurisdiction over mines and any mining activities as defined under the Mines Act. So I'll go back to that portion of my note. So the CVRD soil bylaw states that soil to be deposited as part of a reclamation of a mine, as authorized under the Mines Act, is exempt from requiring a soil deposit permit. Therefore, if it had happened today that the soil was brought on with this current soil deposit bylaw, a soil deposit permit would still not be required.
Okay. It's just a little bit confusing. Sorry, Mr. Chair, and I'm just trying to get this clear in my own mind there as to.
So, Director Wilson, can I come back out?
Of course. Yeah. Sorry.
Okay, I'll go to Director Yanni DiNardo now, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It is confusing between the Mines Act, the ALC, what our responsibility is. All of that is still baffling me even after all these years. So if I've got this clear, the ALC sent us for us to respond through a portal. Is that correct, Ms. Wright? An ALC portal for us to give a response from the board?
Through to the chair, yes, that's how we receive any referral from the ALC, which would include subdivision applications on ALR land, applications like that. So yes, it was submitted through the same portal to the CBRD.
Thank you. And so sending it, so the recommendation is send this to the ALR. Do we send it with all of our comments, actually hearing from the community and seeing all these concerns? What will we send back to them?
Through to the chair. So right now, the committee, if you so wish, could amend the recommendations to include sending the comments from the community or adding any comments that you wish. But right now, it would be the report and the supporting documentation that we were given that would be submitted to, as well as the board minutes would be also submitted to the ALC for referral.
I just have a follow-up. Mr. Chair, thank you. So I think it would be prudent for us to send the communications that we've received from the community as well, and adding that to the report, because what I'm hearing from the community is they've tried to discuss their issues for quite some time too, the Residents Association, et cetera. So that would be valuable. So I'll wait to hear from the committee.
Okay, we'll go to Director Acton next.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, thanks for bringing up the community, Director Yanni DiNardo. Probably about 5 years ago, I attended, almost coming up to 5 years ago, I attended a backyard meeting with almost 100 people from the Kingburn community area. And from there, they got organized. They have been challenged with the operations happening in this area for a long time, and they got themselves organized. They have since formed a proper association. They have spent probably 100 volunteer hours writing letters, documenting what's happening there, talking to different statutory decision makers, ministers. They have been very respectful. And the reason why we see this application today is because of them. They have not given up on how their community should be. It's been 22 years that, as we mentioned, since 1999, that a plan was put in place. And clearly the plan is not being followed, because here we are again, amending the plan, which will just continue to be a mining operation. So I guess, you know, what we're doing, so we represent the community. We are the community. CBRD is the community, and they are speaking loud and clear and very respectfully that they need our help. And you know what AVICC taught me and reminded me was we actually can work together. We can work cross jurisdictions, and you know, there's people at the other end of that, and we can actually work together. So I would really like to have a conversation of how we're going to work together, how we're not just going to send a piece of paper over to the ALC. First, I do have a question, like, have we actually talked to the ALC about this application first before bringing it to committee? And what happens if we deny it? Like, that's what the community of Kingbourne is asking for. But, you know, and I think reclaiming this land is obviously the best thing for the community, but no one kind of believes that's what's going to happen. So how do we work with other jurisdictions and ensure it's going to happen? I'd like to see a plan. I'd like to also see this plan that was presented in 1999 and a more detailed plan moving forward with timelines and quantifiable, measurable action items, so that you know, we as a community can make those accountable and say, you know, we're working together here. How are we going to ensure? I know I'm getting into a lot of questions here, so I just stop for a second, and you know, maybe we can have a little bit more background of what has happened and what would happen if we denied it.
Okay, I'll turn to staff for comments on that.
So through to the chair, to Director Acton, we did discuss with the ALC bylaw officer about kind of derelict vehicles that were on the site and the removal of those, which did happen. Some of them were removed at the request of the CBRD as part of this application. In terms of ALR land, applicants are allowed to have vehicles that are related to farm use, but there were a lot that were not relate to farm use, so we asked for them to be removed. However, in terms of details of the application, there was no further information requested because both plans were provided by the applicant, the original AEP, as well as the current one. So at this point, as we are just a referral process for these plans that have been submitted, there was no further conversation with the ALC. In terms of if we deny the application or recommend that it not proceed to the ALC, a note would be sent as opposed to and the minutes of the board meeting would be sent to the ALC in response. So overall, it would probably be best if the recommendation be reworked to include, you know, reasons as to why the board or the committee would like to possibly deny the application, or what comments you would like to include in the recommendation that goes forward to the ALC, because that is the way that they assess what the local government has to say.
Okay, so I'll turn to Director Nicholson.
Director Acton said a lot of what I wanted to say, so I need to think a little bit more here. Come back to me, please.
Okay. Director Martin.
Thank you, and I'm gonna pull the rookie card on this one because this is complicated. From at least it appears to have some complications in it, and so in respect of looking at coming up in R3, why are we not looking at a closure application? I just trying to understand why that's not sort of coming forward to us. And can that be explained simply?
That's right.
Through to the chair, to Director Martman, I don't believe, and perhaps Mr. Elliott could also help me in this because he deals with this more than I do, but I don't believe they have to apply to close the mine. They have to amend their existing application with the Ministry of Energy and Mines to tell them that they're closing the mine, not apply to close the mine. However, perhaps I'm wrong on that, and Mr. Elliott could provide a little more information.
Yes, Mr. Elliott.
To Director Martman, through the chair. This is quite clear-cut. The licensure, i.e. the permit to operate for this aggregate extraction, which includes both the initial opening and how that was conducted, subsequent activities, extractions, various other operations that are occurring within the mine site, are within the jurisdiction of energy mines and low carbon innovation. For those lands that are within the ALR, the ALC also has additional say in what activities can take place and what those lands can be modified to or from. And ultimately, it is the role of local government to do exactly as you are, which is providing voice for the local community while also ensuring that the various bylaws, regulations, and whatnot that are set forth under the Local Government Act are congruent with both the usage and permitting for the site. So it's just three different legislative bodies that have different jurisdictions, and the CVRD does not have jurisdiction over the mining operation, its reclamation, or its closure.
Okay, thank you. Director Martman, follow up, or you're good with that for now?
I guess, thank you for that. I appreciate sort of that clarity. I think the essence of my question, though, is if you are going to close, is this about closure or is there about continuing activity, and then the closure in 2026? I'm just trying to understand if it's I guess going back to Director Acton, sort of what is happening over the next 4 years within this area?
So through to the chair, to Director Martman. So those were the numbers I stumbled upon earlier. So the original plan permitted the owners to extract approximately 400,000 cubic meters of aggregate on the site. And to date, they've extracted approximately 305,000 cubic meters, meaning they still have room to extract more as per their original plan. This plan is also to amend the original one to include the soil that was brought in from off-site, as well as to include their closure operations. So this is an amendment plan, but yes, they do have the ability to still operate until they've reached that number that they were permitted to do. And I assume, and perhaps Mr. Elliott could weigh in on this as well, but I assume at the time that almost 400,000 cubic meters of gravel is extracted, that the closure operations would begin in full force then.
Okay, thank you. All right, I'll go back to Director Acton.
Yeah, so this just kind of goes back to my comment of that there actually really is no plan. We're not there on what the plan is. And so how can we ask the ALC to enforce or to actually have any kind of compliance when we're not actually sure of what the plan is? So we hear 2026. So can someone explain to me better what we should see in 2026? It's not actually anything, or does that just when the original one runs out? I'm starting to get confused here.
Okay, who'd like that?
Through to the chair, I believe Mr. Elliott would be the best suited to answer that question.
Okay, Mr. Elliott.
To Director Acton via the chair, I respectfully disagree. This aggregate extraction plan, the modification of the originally one that was issued, includes both a timetable as well as a phased reclamation to agricultural status, starting from the south and moving to the north. The remaining extraction of aggregate resources is both volumetrically and strategically situated such that that volume will be met as they are closing up the last section and achieving, as was stated in the introduction by staff, a prime agricultural land base.
Okay. So I do have Director Nicholson next. Would you like to think on it a bit more, Director Acton, or do you want to?
Am I still on the list, Mr. Chair? You promised you'd come back to me
I
sometime.
did. Sorry, Director Wilson. We'll go to you right after Director Acton.
Thank you.
I guess I'm just getting, so, okay, I'm told that, no, actually there is a detailed plan. So can someone walk us through that detailed plan and how we would understand when these milestones are hit so that the community and the ALC is clear of when this plan is being executed?
Through the chair, I do believe that this is another question that Mr. Elliott would be best suited to respond to.
Mr. Elliott.
To Director Acton via the chair, I'm actually just pulling up the document as we speak. And I believe that your question was pertaining specifically to timelines and milestones. Now, and respectfully, the community is not privy to energy mines and low carbon innovation operations. The community is not kept apprised of that by the ALC or energy mines and low carbon operations. And consequently, the reporting that is sent to energy and mines and the ALC is not distributed to the community by the energy and mines or the ALC. So appreciating that there is a sense of lack of awareness within the community, the reporting and ongoing interaction and communication between the operator and the regulating bodies is strong, and it is in existence. And as such, the communication breakdown may be best taken up with those agencies. Now, as I find my schedules, I'll be able to provide you with that. So through to 2026, we are looking to progressively close. Starting in 2022, we are intending to develop 1715 on the border of Thane Road, so as to access the new farmland and establish the grade at which the rest of the land will tie into. The land at 1715, being within the ALR, will be cleared, broken, and leveled, and then it will be left fallow for a year for to let the soil heal, and then further incorporation of organic matter and continuation of that grade into the mine site will commence in 2023. 2023 through 2025, we'll see the lands that are within the ALR and up to the northern boundary of 1745 Thane Road, i.e. the site that you were provided an image of, land leveled, and the main leveled ground in the central portion will be both top dressed with topsoil and then have shredded organic matter incorporated so as to boost that organic content and cover cropped for soil protection purposes. The sidewalls being where there are cut slopes currently, or on the eastern side as it travels to the railway that is still in existence there. Those side slopes will be more heavily, or will receive a heavier application of shredded organic matter, woody debris in this case, or land clearing debris, so as to provide soil stability and prevent any potential rill erosion that might arise. And this will also be coupled with cover cropping. Now, in 2026, the northern extent of the mine site, which is not part of this application or AEP at this time, is set for closure, and at that time they would be removing all of the remaining infrastructure associated with the mine operation at that location. And the intent is to have that grade that was established at 1715 Thane Road extend north and northwest to form a level agricultural field for further crop production.
Yeah, thank
I have a few questions. So that you said the mining site in 2026 for closure. Like, sorry, some of this is a bit complicated. What is the percentage of the total property that we're looking at now that you talk about when you mention that? Is that for the complete property, or that's just one part of the mine site?
Mr. Elliott.
To Director Acton through the chair, I believe, and I think that staff has the numbers right in front of them. I suppose I could search my document to find them, but I believe that there are currently 5 hectares of land that are currently open, and the intention is to have 4 hectares of prime agricultural land fall out of that, with the remaining being, as was stated, side slopes, so lands that would be experiencing a topographic limitation to agriculture.
Okay, thank you. That's I'll now turn to Director Wilson and then Nicholson. Director Wilson, please.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I'm glad I'm not the only one that's confused here. Again, going back to what Mr. Elliott said, and I've got a couple of questions here. Can you just, did I hear it right that the CVRD has no jurisdiction or powers in this particular case? Now, enlighten me on this one. What does that actually mean? Did I hear that right or not?
To Director Wilson via the chair, the CVRD has the jurisdiction to apply their bylaws and legislation as has been created under the Local Government Act to this site, except for where it is superseded by provincial or federal legislation. So in this circumstance, it is superseded by provincial legislation, namely that mine sites are subject to energy and mines.
That's what I thought I heard. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, follow up, please, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
Yeah, one of the things I heard there was that there have been communication breakdowns within the provincial agency between the CVRD, even though the information is being given to the province. Well, this is nothing new. We've heard that one before, especially in my particular case. But can you, one of the things that I've been very active in, and I'm sure most people know this, is the protection of the aquifers. So as I understand it, Aquifer 197 is below this land. And what concerns me here is that the original layer of gravel that was there acts as a very, very effective filter for any pollutants coming through from the topsoil. That layer of gravel, if I'm correct, has been taken out by the mining activities, and it'll now be replaced by soils of suitable quality. Where we don't know what is actually in those soils. Is there another layer of gravel underneath that which has been taken away, or are we now relying purely on the level of quality of soil which is being brought in to protect the aquifers below? And are there any plans to install monitoring stations for any kind of possible pollutants coming through? Thank you.
Who are you directing that to, Director Wilson?
I'm assuming that would go to Mr. Elliott.
Okay, Mr. Elliott.
To Director Wilson via the chair. So first and foremost, let's actually clear a couple things up. A fundamental aspect of groundwater protection provided by overburden, namely the soil and gravel and sand and whatnot that is above the active hydrostratigraphic unit, being the layer of material at depth that contains our drinking water. The protection that is afforded has a couple of different factors. First and foremost of which would be permeability. And if you have a low permeability scenario, it's essentially like pouring water onto a piece of plastic. It doesn't infiltrate, it just runs off to your streams or whatnot. The second layer, let's say if there is sufficient permeability for water to infiltrate, would be the organic content within the soil. And the organic content within soil is concentrated in the upper 0.5 meters or half a meter. There has been soil organic content and modified chemical organic content down to about 2 meters on Vancouver Island and in CVRD. Now, that is essentially what would adsorb contaminant compounds and metals, whereas the permeability just simply refuses access, or the lack of permeability would refuse access. So we have two different mechanisms that provide protection to vulnerable aquifers at depth. One being the adsorption onto the interceding materials, being the overburden in the soils and gravels and sands. The other being the lack of access, the permeability. In this circumstance, the original land surface had a very thin veneer of organic matter, less than 10 centimeters, and the underlying gravel and sand had virtually no organic content and had a very high permeability. So the overlying and native soils offered very little protection to the underlying aquifer, if you look at it in those factors. Now, when we are looking at the reclaimed land, what is intended is that there will be a significant investment of organic content within the upper soil. So the upper 0.4 meters is what the plan is currently calling for. And that upper soil profile will both be from the salvaged topsoils from virgin lands, being of native composition, but also amended with additional organic materials, both from shredded wood residuals, as well as standard agricultural practices, including the incorporation of compost and injection of manure slurries. So those activities, in conjunction with a continued and extensive overburden, until you reach aquifer, the underlying aquifer. And I believe that the water table in that area is roughly, I'm sorry, I can't remember the numbers off the top of my head, but regardless, there is indeed additional overburden before the underlying aquifer is reached. So while there has been an aggregate extraction operation on site, think of it as they mined a hill and they've made the hill flat. And now it is in level with the rest of the surrounding landscape. So it offers the same amount of protection and will eventually offer more protection to the underlying aquifer from surface contamination under full reclamation status. Now, with regard to your commentary about soil quality, the ALC has very strict rules and requirements for the importation of topsoil. And to be clear, the importation of topsoil is not intended to be a future part of this program. As such, no further importation of topsoil is intended for this site. But if that becomes a necessity due to operational realities, then what we would do is adhere to the ALC's requirements for importation of topsoil.
Okay. Director Wilson, that's fine for now. Okay. So we'll circle back to Director Nicholson and then back to Director Acton, hopefully for a motion. Director Nicholson.
Wow. I'm finding this application very challenging. It's pretty clear that the applicant has had significant compliance issues in the past, and the original plan was for 10 years, and here it is over 20 years on, and we're still talking about another 4 years before closure, and I am not clear how we can be sure that the reclamation will happen at that point. I think the community really expects better, and they really deserve to understand how we can help to make sure that this happens. And we're working in a system that sort of forces us. Here we have an operation that spans a couple of different zones, and it's got the mines as a regulator, it's got ALC and probably Ministry of Environment, and then we're overlaid on that, and we're asked to look at one little tiny piece of the puzzle. It just doesn't work, and I think that there's too many opportunities for things to go wrong. So I guess my question to staff at this point is, they have discussed it with the ALC bylaw person, but it strikes me that we need to facilitate bringing together all the regulators to take a look at what we need to do on this site moving forward and how we are going to make sure it's monitored and complied with. Because this is just not acceptable. And I'll just remind you once again that this is the Coke-Sila watershed, and I am very concerned about it. And we weren't given any information on the watershed impacts here, but I certainly wouldn't think that clearing more land to produce agricultural land that won't be able to be used for agriculture because we're running out of water would be a smart thing to do at this point. You'd lose the carbon and any other benefits that you have of the tree cover. So honestly, but I really want to know from staff how we can facilitate a process that brings the regulators together to work on this, and not just the ALC, but mines and MOE.
Okay, does any staff want to comment on that?
Through to the chair, perhaps Mr. Tippett or Ms. Cheryl will provide comments on going forward.
Yes, I was wondering. There we go, Ms. Cheryl.
Mr. Chair, thank you. So I think the question that's been posed is fundamentally about our regulatory, interjurisdictional regulatory framework for mining, agriculture, and local government in British Columbia, and that is a fairly complex framework. Certainly, staff could follow up with the respective agencies and request whether there's an opportunity for the agencies to, convene in a coordinated meeting to discuss the issues, but I don't believe we have any way of sort of compelling agencies to do that. This might be a topic that could be explored for potential AVICC or EBCM resolution, but it's certainly complex, and if there's a specific request or desire for staff to do some more research and to come back to the committee, we could certainly do that.
Okay. Director Nicholson.
I get that there is no regulatory ability for us to actually make sure things work well here, but there must be a moral a moral thing here in all the everyone must want to do a good job, and it strikes me that if we built relationships with these regulatory agencies they would welcome the opportunity to work together when it's clear they have a problem. And I think that I would like to refer this back for staff to talk to those other agencies and see if they could maybe have a real conversation about how they would like to see this handled moving forward before it goes just to the ALC and perhaps, you know, gets stalled there for whatever reason. This is really important. This is land. This is important land use stuff. And we have to be able to have some effect on it. And if we don't have the regulatory authority, we have to be able to stand up for the community and try to facilitate the right thing.
Okay, thank you. So that was seconded, Director Nicholson. So any further discussion on that referral motion? Director Acton.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Director Nicholson. I was thinking that would be, you know, having the communication with the other jurisdictions is really important, and I agree we should have that before we go forward, and getting as much information as we can and commitment, you know, and I don't believe that we can't do this, and that we should keep doing things the way we have in the past. But we have done this before. We were quite successful with dumping. It was like garbage dumping in the woods in Area B, and all the regulatory jurisdictions came together, and we had different commitments from, you know, Ministry of Transportation, etc. And I think that would give us a lot more reassurance for approving this application. I would still like to, Mr. Elliott's comments about perhaps that we're not privy to some of the information, but I believe that usually mine permits are public information. So, you know, we could have more info. They're not operating in secrecy. So to have more information and more volumes of what to expect, I think would be also really great to have a clearer closure plan that has better details that we can keep this operator accountable to, because let's not forget, we are here today looking at this application because of the Kingburn community. And we're not happy with, you know, they're not happy with how their community has become formed, and I agree, we can't just accept that this is the way it is. So I support the referral motion, and I don't know if staff needs more information.
Director Yanni DiNardo.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is a little off topic, but Director Morrison I'm getting motion sickness. I don't know if he can turn his camera off. It's distracting. I think he can hear us and everything, but I think it would be valuable if he could. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. All right. Any further comments or we call the question on the referral motion? Director Kuhn.
What is the purpose of the referral again?
Director Nicholson.
Through to the chair, Director Kuhn. The purpose is to sorry, just Director Morrison coming in out there. The purpose is to provide to inform the ALC that we have received the referral and provide comment if we feel necessary. But it is not to direct the application in any way. That is for the ministry who oversees the Mining Act, as well as the Agricultural Land Commission.
Yeah, I was afraid we were referring back to staff. I mean, so maybe I would just yeah.
Okay, I see. So first, Mr. Elf, and then we'll go to Director Nicholson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, pursuant to the ALC Act, non-farm use applications do not proceed to the ALC unless authorized by a resolution from local government. So you could decide not to advance this to the ALC, and that would leave the applicant with their current plans and their current approval.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So, okay, Director Nicholson, do you want to go first, or Director Acton? Which?
Well, I would like to clarify my referral motion.
Okay.
And Director Kuhn, I hope you listen this time. I want to refer it back to staff to facilitate a conversation with the other regulators, mines and ALC, all together in the same room, and Ministry of Environment, to talk about this particular site and operations, the non-compliance issues, and how they think together they can work together to move this forward in a more positive way. And I would like that information before we make a decision on whether to refer it to the ALC. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So, the follow-up then, Director Kuhn, is that, go ahead.
Well, haven't we been there before? It seems every time we get into a higher authority, we kind of get snubbed. Because in this case, we don't have much authority here. So now we're trying to build a base. It's going to take ages. The applicants will be sitting there in limbo. And I doubt very much if we can achieve very much. We haven't been very successful with mines. And here we're trying to do the same thing again. So anyway, I'm not in favor of referral though.
Okay, thank you. So Director Acton and then Wilson.
Yeah, exactly. That it is a referral back to staff and then come back to us with a bit of a plan of how we're going to move forward and work with these agencies. And then we can decide to proceed with our recommendation to the ALC. So that's quite clear to me. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Director Wilson.
Yeah, pretty clear to me as well. And with all due respect to Director Kuhn, if we don't keep talking to the province and all the rest of it, then we're going to get nowhere anywhere. Believe me, I've been there, I'm still there, and I will still continue talking and harassing people to get talking to the people who supposedly have the power to do something. Don't give up on it.
Okay, good. Thank you. Seeing no further hands, I'd like to call the question on the referral motion.
Did Director Morrison have his hand up?
Oh, did you, Director Morrison?
I'll pass.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, we're ready to call the question. All in favor? Opposed? 2 opposed. Motion carries. Okay, thank you very much. We need a break or we keep going? Go ahead. I didn't hear.
How about 5 minutes?
Okay. 5-minute break. We'll see at 3:56. Thank you. Sort of suitable for a long meeting.
Video's live.
Okay, thank you and welcome back, everyone. So can we go now to the next item on the agenda, please, Ms. Legault?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Item R3 is a report from Development Services on application ALR 21E03. There's a recommendation on the agenda, and I've just brought the applicant, Julie Budgeon, into the meeting.
Great, thank you. And welcome to the applicant. And once again, we have Ms. Wright.
I'm back. So, if you could go to the, thank you, Mike. So I'm here today to present, ALR 21E03. This is an agricultural land commission application for a non-farm use, removal of soil and placement of fill to improve the present agricultural capability and replace topsoil at 2919 Dupe Road. The property is located on the north side of Dupe Road and is approximately 4.1 hectares. The parcel is zoned renewable resource agricultural and, is designated renewable resource agricultural and zoned primary agricultural and is within the ALR. Next slide, please. So the property is similar to the last one, is subject to the Agricultural Land Commission Act and Mines Act. The site has been operating since 2010 under an approved Mines Act permit, which authorized sand and gravel quarry operations. So once again, similar to the last application, that the CBRD in this case is a referral received this application as a referral from the Agricultural Land Commission, and we are a referral agency only, not the decision makers in the overall application. So the applicant is now seeking to complete the reclamation plan and close the quarry with the intent of creating as much agricultural land as possible. Next slide, please. There's just under 13,000 square meters of undisturbed forested land on the property, with approximately 23,600 square meters of land remaining to be reclaimed after decommissioning the quarry. As seen in the image, the native salvaged topsoil and overburden is stored on the western portion of the site, and the plan states that it may be supplemented with topsoil brought in from off-site. Imported fill will only be required if there's a shortage of salvaged topsoil on the site. If required, the fill is expected to be sourced locally and must be approved by a professional agrologist. So, as I stated in the previous application, the CBRD soil deposit bylaw states that soil to be deposited as part of a reclamation of a mine, as authorized under the Mines Act, is exempt from requiring a soil deposit permit. Next slide, please. So the report outlines a reclamation plan which calls for quarterly monitoring during the reclamation process and reporting by a qualified professional to the ALC until the quarry is officially closed. Overall, it's expected that the subject property will be effectively reclaimed to productive agricultural land suitable for agricultural land uses such as a tree farm. Staff recommend that the application be forwarded to the ALC, who will determine if the plan is in compliance with the ALC Act and regulations. As noted by Ms. Legault, the agent for the application, Ms. Julie Budgeon, is in attendance and available to answer any questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So, first, do we have any questions for staff? Director Acton.
Thank you. So I guess, and I haven't heard a lot from this site, and this, sounds like a good idea to close this mine site and turn it back into usable agricultural land. So it all sounds great, but there's the regulatory agencies that are actually responsible don't have the boots on the ground like we do. So we do have a soil bylaw officer. I'm wondering, is he permitted to go on site and ask them for their records and look at their, documentation of, the activity that's going on site, like just in a friendly way, so that he can help support these other agencies that have the jurisdiction. Can we do that?
Through you, Mr. Chair. This is not in our authority, so we don't have the ability to do that. We could request it, but they could deny it.
Okay.
But we could walk on site and ask to work with the operators. Just a friendly, like, hey, how's it going here? And what are you up to? Are you following your reclamation plan?
Through you, Mr. Chair. No, I don't think to the level that you're suggesting. What would our business be on site if we're not enforcing our bylaw? And if our bylaw doesn't stand up there, then we have no business being on the property.
Okay, and Ms. Wright, do you want to add to that?
Yes, thank you. I'd just like to add that there are specific regulations, I'm not quite sure what they are, under the Mines Act to permit people on the site. So for instance, when I attended the site with the soil bylaw officer, we had to get permission, and Ms. Budgeon was there, and she had to follow protocols in order to allow us on the site. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, other questions for staff? Director Martman.
Thank you, Chair, and through the staff. I noticed in the report that they provide under, I think it's section 5, called monitoring and reporting, and understanding that this would go to the, I guess, the mines department or area. Is there a way for us to be advised that this has been followed, or that they've completed bullet 1, completed bullet 2, just so that there's a bit of a feedback loop, because I think that's what we're really looking for, is that things are as laid out here are followed, and the requirements have been met, just because I guess they're speaking of that absence of information, and maybe that's all part of the last discussion.
Who would like to take that one? That's right.
Through to the chair, to Director Martman. So the CBRD in this is just the referral. So we're not the decision makers, and with that, there is no requirement to inform CBRD officials of exactly what's happening on the site and when it's happening. Perhaps Ms. Budgeon could include a little more information in that, but it is not they're not required to permit a local government to have a step-by-step timeline of what's happening and when.
Okay, Ms. Budgeon, would you like to add anything?
Sure, yeah, with the different regulatory bodies, just to speak to the other side of it, with the Ministry of Mines, we provide a reclamation plan every year, an update with the topsoil volumes and everything. And then with the ALC, they've been on site a few times, and then we also provide them with continual updates. I could maybe talk to the client and see if I can share the same information, because we're doing it anyways. We're looking at, we'll be monitoring everything, weed removal, topsoil applications, everything. So Lauren and I have already been in touch and met on site, and also I provided her with the reclamation plan that we put together. So I think there would be an opportunity there where I could just provide it. I'll talk to the owners and see if they're okay with that. And then you would have that information as well.
Okay, thank you. Other comments or questions? Director Nicholson?
I have a comment. I thought this was a great reclamation plan in stark contrast to our previous application. And I would like to move the recommendation.
Okay, that's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed? None opposed. Motion carries. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, now we will move to the next item. Please, Ms. Legault.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Item R4 is report from Development Services regarding application number 01-C17RS for Fisher Road. And there's a recommendation provided on the agenda. I've brought applicants in, Grant McKinnon and Richard Buckles.
Okay, great. Welcome, Mr. McKinnon and Mr. Buckles. So we have Ms. Herrera, you have a presentation?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
Great. So this item is an OCP amendment and rezoning application, file number 01-C17RS for the property located on Fisher Road in Electoral Area C. And this application has come before the committee a number of times in the past, and so I'll just go over some of the background property information here as well. First, so you have the subject property on the screen. Next slide, please. So this is the OCP mapping for the area. The entire subject property is designated agricultural. Lands to the north and south are industrial. Across the road is commercial on Fisher Road, and west behind the property is agriculturally designated land. Next slide. So the zoning map here shows the subject property is split zoned, with the northern portion of the property already zoned I1C. And the surrounding lands are zoned to match up with their underlying designations, which I just mentioned, industrial, commercial, and agricultural. So there's sort of a mix of those zones surrounding the property. So next slide. So just wanted to provide this future development parcel area map. So there's going to be boundary adjustments for this property so that essentially the future development parcel would be what is shown in the red solid line, and the dotted lines represent existing parcel lines. And so there is a existing I-1C parcel abutting the subject property, which also fronts on Fisher Road, which is showing as part of the dotted lines there. And that part you can see with the aerial photo underneath is providing access currently to the Rona and the Pacific Trust site there, and would be partially combined with the subject property to provide access and some of the lot areas for this future subdivision parcel. So hopefully this image helps clarify a little bit in terms of what the future development area is. So next slide. So the general purpose of this application is to redesignate and rezone the property from agriculture to industrial, and ultimately to allow for a subdivision. The last direction from the committee and the board was to review the list of permitted uses to look at prohibiting some that may be problematic for the aquifer. So what you have before you in your package is a proposed new zone that allows for a mix of industrial uses, however, does provide some conditions of use, including several that are only permitted subject to being connected to a community sewer system. And the applicant is agreeable to the proposed new zone. And the concept plan on the slide is showing a potential future subdivision layout. So we're not securing this plan through the rezoning, but it is meant to demonstrate how the lots would be subdivided, which is a plan you've seen previously as well. And next slide. So these are the bylaw amendment maps, and I wanted to just put this up to clarify what's occurring with the amendments. So there are two amendments, an OCP amendment and zoning amendment, and both include map amendments. Staff is recommending that the existing I-1C zone or lot abutting the site that is planned to be part of the future subdivision also be part of the zoning amendment to the proposed new I-1H zone. And this would just help ensure that there's no confusion over the zone uses and how it's developed with the future subdivision. So currently on the zoning portion, you can see that there's an existing lot I-1C to I-1H, and the existing subject property is currently A1, and it would go A1 to I-1H. The OCP map is currently renewable resource agriculture and would go to industrial, which is the entire subject property currently. And also of note is that the OCP amendment includes adding the subject property into the commercial and industrial development permit areas as well to ensure that there's form and character development permits required in the future. And with the zoning amendment bylaw, it does include both map and text amendments. And so both of those zones were drafted and included in your package as well. Last slide. So just along with the proposed zone, there are several recommendations that have been listed in the recommended resolution, which relate to the groundwater monitoring well and securing a right-of-way, requiring a lot boundary adjustment now to clean up the boundaries, and to register a covenant to require community water, fire hydrants, and to prohibit a shared strata on-site sewerage system. So if there's any questions, we'd be happy to answer them, and the applicants are here as well.
Sorry, Director Wilson, go ahead, please.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Basically, I'd just like to move the recommendation. If I have a seconder, I will speak to it.
All right, that's been seconded. Go ahead.
Thank you very much. So first of all, thank you to Ms. Herrera. Very clear, very concise presentation. Thank you for that. Look at this lot here. I've got all sorts of reports and pieces of paper and everything else that goes together with this application, which dates back to 2018 when the joint APC toured the site and was pretty well unanimous in its approval. You're probably happy to hear I'm not going to go through all these reports. Everything is there. It's all everything's in place, and I am in complete support of this. Always have been. Let's just say the staff departments, all the staff departments, engineering, planning, environmental, and the applicant have worked pretty much tirelessly over the last 4 years to achieve what I feel is truly a practical and elegant solution and a way forward. So basically, I'm asking for your support for our local community, for our local businesses to move this forward in a manner that really we should have done a while ago. But help me out on this one, folks. There's nothing wrong with this application. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions, Director Nicholson? Sorry, you're muted, Director Nicholson.
Sorry about that. Thank you. I went back to look at it. My memory's not very good, so I went back and looked at the video from our last meeting about this, which was right. I think it was scheduled right when COVID happened, and so it was postponed. It took us, Mike and I, a while to find it, but it was April 15th, I think, 2020. And I looked at the video. And the issue with this application, is about aquifer protection. So we have a very vulnerable aquifer, and there's already been quite a bit of contamination in the Fisher Road area as a result of nitrates and so forth from inappropriate activities on that aquifer. And I think that my feeling about that I had at that time, I feel the same way today. Things are only going to develop more, and it seems that if you're going to look forward, that the right thing to do would be to insist that this rezoning require that it be connected to sewer. It just seems to me a no-brainer to ensure we protect the aquifer. And so while I could support the zone as Ms. Herrera has presented, I uses in the zone, I really think that we need to add the addition requirement of connecting to community sewer. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, I'll go back to Director Wilson then.
Yeah, Director Nicholson is quite right. We are here. She and I are on the same page as far as protection of the aquifer is concerned. As far as the community sewer is concerned, perhaps, and I did have a chat with another director about that. I've put $340,000 of Community Works Fund gas tax money towards the extension of the sewer line up Fisher Roads towards that area. Now, that was about a year or maybe 18 months ago, and I see Mr. Dennison has popped up there, and I'm glad he has, because at the time 340,000 was pretty much in line with extending that line up to conform with what Director Nicholson and Director Acton had asked for. Unfortunately, with COVID, the delays and supplies, that's no longer enough. But we are in the process of extending that line as far as we can. And when more funds become available, we will connect it in there. I am committed to protecting that aquifer. This is a start. And we're getting there. Just give me a bit more money and a bit more time, and I'll get it done. I promise. Mr. Dennison, go on, help me out here.
Mr. Dennison.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't really have much to add. It's quite accurate. Unfortunately, we had intended, we had the funding, and under the costs we had before us, we expected to be able to get to Ball Road, Fisher Road and Ball Road, which is almost was most of the way towards the applicant's property, so that the amount they would be left with cost-wise to connect would have been relatively modest. As it is now, with the cost scenarios we're facing, it's only going to be to Fairfield and Fisher, and so that's quite a bit shorter than what was before. And of course, their relative costs have gone up, both because of the cost of providing service and because it's quite a bit further away. So unfortunately, our intent was thwarted because of circumstances we have before us. But certainly, we welcome a further funding in future to advance down the road if that possibility becomes before us.
Well, Director Wilson.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Dennison. That's great. And as Mr. Dennison says, when we get more funding, if somebody gives me some more gas tax money, and in fact, if Director Nicholson wants to throw some money my way, I'm more than happy to use those funds as well. But no, we are doing everything we can to get that line up towards that area for the future.
Okay, maybe I'll just insert myself here. So, Mr. Dennison, so I noticed in the meantime, we are putting a restriction on the creation of shared sewage systems. Can you just speak to that a little bit? What does that mean?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So one of the problems that we have, or have seen again and again throughout the regional district in the past, and one of the reasons that we have so many small utilities, is that these small strata-owned or private utilities, water and sewer, get created. And then down the road, things start to go wrong. And because they're kind of a small community system, like a strata-owned, there's a high expectation of being rescued from their troubles. And so we really don't think that's a way to go. Either it's, for anything that's, being done anywhere, really, it either connects into a proper community system, such as ourselves, or an improvement district, or something, perhaps a municipality of that nature, or they go on site, where individuals look after their own because they'll take responsibility for it. To take over a small utility or be in that situation, has ended up being a real problem. So in the zoning amendments, as the planning department has put forward, they would not be permitted to do a strata-owned overall system. Instead, there would be individual on-site systems for each of the units tailored to their own needs, right? So if they have very few staff and very few flows, it would be quite small. If they had a bit more, it could be larger, although we have gone through the zoning definition to take out uses that either could lead to contamination, they might have toxic materials in the use, or would be a large size, like a facility that might be have a lot of processed water, like say agricultural processing, where you've got a lot of processed water, and that makes it difficult to have an on-site system. So that amending or that adjustment to the zoning definition, I think, has addressed a lot of those problems.
Okay, thank you. So maybe I'll turn to the applicants if they want to add anything at this point. Good. Okay.
Oh, sorry, I had to find my unmute button there.
Okay, go ahead, Mr. McKinnon.
I don't really have anything to add. I just kind of echo a little bit what Brian and Director Wilson have said, is that we've worked pretty hard to try and accomplish everything for everybody. So that's kind of where we're at.
Okay. Could you maybe just remind us, are you still intending mini storage there? What's your intent for the property?
Well, the intent would primarily be, originally when we started, we wanted to be more like light industrial warehousing, like cabinet building, kind of like what you see there. It's like more of I envision that I'm looking at the Cobble Hill area, and we're seeing, like with Demex going across the road, that it's going to be kind of an interesting community for building supplies and that whole. We've got 2 truss plants, we've got 2 cabinet bakers, trades. I would like to see like the like some kind of the artisan kind of some of the guys, like, so I'm looking at buildings that are, say, have a small retail with a production facility in the back is ideally what I'd like to see. The mini warehouse was originally, it's not entirely my preference to have a mini warehouse. The reasons being that it doesn't provide a ton of employment. But what I did like about it against the property line at the back, where inevitably we're going to have residential development. It does provide a pretty good buffer between an industrial and an inevitable residential, in the fact that it's low impact and low usage and low hours. So that was kind of my thought at that point.
Okay, makes sense. Thank you.
The idea was not to have 10 acres of industrial or of warehouses.
Right. Other questions? Director Nicholson.
Two questions, one for Mr. Dennison. Mr. Dennison, what were the priorities for sewer connections in Cobble Hill?
Mr. Chairman, so we generally are pretty open to, so one thing to note too, this particular property is actually outside of the urban containment boundary. So it wasn't part of the original intent to include it into the sewer service area. I would say that our first priority is the core area of the village. It would be good if we enabled higher densities in there to support that. That would be something. We've got some commercial connections already, and certainly any failed on-site systems that people may have. It's not that common in Cobble Hill because the ground is generally pretty good as compared to other locations in the regional district. But certainly if there were that problem, there's a development, a larger development, 30 odd homes going in. They'll be connecting into the system, and that's completely enabled by our sewer system. That would not be possible otherwise. So, I think it's homes for people to live in. Maybe in future, there's some of the zoning allows for some higher density, so there could be more affordable homes being allowed to be connected, that kind of thing. So generally speaking, in the core area and then moving outward over time.
Okay. Follow up.
I think you mentioned Hutchinson Road at the last time we talked about this. I'm also wondering about what kind of amenity contributions the community can expect on this rezoning OCP amendment.
Like that one, Ms. Herrera.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I think this was discussed previously, and the applicant put forward basically sort of the contributions that they already make. And under the previous OCP, there was policy that did speak to this in terms of more emphasis, I believe, on amenities when it was a residential sort of situation over existing commercial. So yeah, essentially there is no amenity contribution currently with this. And I think part of that was also considering what was going to happen with the sewer system and sort of that potential contribution of extending the line and things like that. But yeah, that's where things stand currently.
So I remain convinced that this is a real opportunity to ensure that this is hooked up to sewer, community sewer.
Okay, thank you. Maybe just one clarifying thing before I get to you, Director Wilson. But in a case like this started under the previous OCP, are we still going on under that OCP, or are we under our new OCP now? Ms. Rivera.
Well, Mr. Chair, the old OCP has been repealed, so we're definitely not amending that. This has been, like the bylaws that are in front of you have been revised to reflect the current OCP and its current designations. There wasn't a lot that changed in terms of the designations and the actual amendments that would have to occur, so they're very similar. It's a map amendment to the OCP, and then bringing it back into a development permit area, which would have been caught under the previous OCP, but we needed to bring that back. Other than that, yeah, I mean, the policy maybe has changed because we've been working on a community amenity policy, I believe, to go along with the new OCP, but going backwards and revisiting the amenity contribution really wasn't a part of that previous direction provided by the committee. And so didn't look at it further.
Okay, thank you. So maybe Director Wilson, can I go to Director Acton first on the first round? Go ahead, Director Acton.
Yeah, I guess it is a shame to not be able to, do the sewer all the way up as Director Wilson envisions one day happening. I think this is an opportunity to make that happen, and I think we need to work with developers more to get that to happen. And if it requires, like, I hope that the developer has thought about, if it's about the cost, then what is it that this property needs to provide in order to make it possible and viable, so that we're working together and saying, okay, well, this is how much it's going to cost. What do we need to zone your property with? Like, does it mean higher density? Does it mean residential on top? Does it, so that everyone benefits? And yeah, I guess, and I would just encourage staff to work with the applicant on an amenity contribution, or if I think it's an opportunity. I'll defer to the director of the area, but I think this is how we get progress in our communities. So I'll sit back and listen some more.
Okay, thank you. Oh, now I have Director Smith. Director Wilson, is that all right with you, or we can, if you?
Well, I could answer the question that's just been asked.
Okay,
If you like,
go ahead
but
then.
I'll defer to Director Smith if she has anything to say here.
Director Smith?
I always have something to say. But I put my hand up, so I do have something to say. I hear the word amenity, and I know how hard we all work in our communities to try and get connections between places that are community footpath type areas. And I'm not sure if under amenities there is an opportunity to consider a trail between the Gallier Road and the Fisher Road, that because I don't see the whole area layout, if that would be beneficial for those areas. And then they can also easily walk to the businesses that are in this industrial area, or if they work there, they can easily walk there. So I'm just wondering, and I think I remember trying to remember, there's a school in that area someplace. And so that would just be a thought that I would thought if there was a possibility for something like that. Thank you.
Good question. Who would like to take that one? Mr. McKinnon.
So that was an original thought, and we had the Parks Board out and we walked it, and they basically said that they didn't feel that it was appropriate to have a trail through there. And one of the concerns we had, first of all, for the kids, it's really not a good spot. They've closed that entrance to the school, so they don't want children coming in from that side of the school. Because it's quite a dangerous corner. The concern we really had was putting a trail through the middle of an industrial park was, in all likelihood, what was going to end up with a 6 foot wide path with chain link on both sides, because nobody really wants access to their properties in an industrial setting, or wants people through it. I don't say I'm totally against it. I'm just not sure that it was, the Parks Board didn't think it was a good use of money. I'm not dead against, I mean, we have to, I believe we have to put up 5% as an amenity for the parks as part of this rezoning. I think that's still the same. So we are doing some community amenities. I don't have any issues with looking at things like if it makes sense for the sewer line to get there and we can increase our densities, great. The problem is that I don't want to commit to it at this stage, in the sense that I would have to spend all this money up front, not even knowing for sure that we can sell anything at the end of the day. So I'm confident that maybe at some point down the road, we can look at the sewer line coming in, but I can't confidently say that I want to commit to it at this point.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Herrera?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I did want to touch on the trail because this was discussed in 2019 when it came before the committee, and the parks manager was able to confirm that it was not an ideal location for a trail, and where the trail would come out, it would, children would also have to run across Fisher Road. And so I just recall that this was fully discussed. It was also in the staff report in June of 2019, June 19th. Report as well, and it also was not supported by the APC at the time either.
Okay, good. Thank you for that. Okay, thank you for your patience, Director Wilson.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Let's just talk about some money here. These are 2019 figures, which will increase quite considerably. At the moment, the property taxes payable on these two parcels there, one of which is agricultural residential and the other one of light industrial, $6,700 per year. If we change it just on the zoning, that would increase to $19,000, an increase of nearly $13,000 a year. And once we rezone it and the build out goes up, that would go to something like $250,000 a year in property taxes. That's the kind of funding that would go towards helping to build out these community CVRD systems that we're looking for here. Mr. McKinnon has already mentioned that there will be a contribution towards the community fund, the community amenities fund. That's going to be dependent on what the value of the land is. But in the past, we do know that, and this has been brought up before, the McKinnon family has been extremely generous with their kind of grants to local sports teams and with donating sand for the Kerry Park fields, etc. So from the point of view of supporting the community, the McKinnon family has been very, very active in this. If we can get this done, we can then look at increased property taxes, which are going to pay for the kind of infrastructure that we're looking for. Thank you.
Great, okay. Seeing no further questions, the recommendation's been moved and seconded. Is everyone okay with it, or do we need it to be read out? Director Nicholson.
I really feel that I need to try this, but I would like to move an amendment to the motion, which is to add connection to sewer, community sewer.
Okay, I'm moving that. Is there a seconder? Do not see one.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. All right, let's move on. I'd like to call the question then. All in favor? Opposed? One opposed. Motion carries. Okay, thank you very much. The next item, please, Ms. Legault.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm just bringing the applicants into the meeting. Okay, item R5 is a report from Development Services regarding application RZ19I01 Lake Town Ranch, and this is for information. We also have the applicants Greg Adams and Mark Mitchell in the meeting.
Okay, and Ms. Suderman.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Oh dear. I have my notes here somewhere, but I've been working on other things. Here we go. So, as you know, RZ19I01 was introduced to the Electoral Area Services Committee on March 16th, 2022, at which time the committee members requested the opportunity for a site visit to better understand the relationship of the various components of the application to the land. So just as a quick reminder, which you can see on this illustration, the Lake Town Ranch rezoning application involves changes to the definition of music festival, to clarify what constitutes a music festival for the purposes of the zoning bylaw. It involves a rezoning of the current institutionally zoned property to industrial uses to permit industrial uses on the site and repurposing of existing infrastructure. And it proposes to create a new zone that combines a year-round RV resort with small-scale attainable residential units, both manufactured homes and cabins. To permit these types of zoning changes to move forward, OCP amendments are also required. And the applicants are offering significant community amenities as part of the rezoning application. Next slide, please. So the site visit was set up and it took place on March 25th, 2022. There were a number of stops at various points on the site with discussion about what is proposed to take place at the various points. There was also an opportunity for questions and answers at each stop. Just hold on that. Oh, you're moving ahead too fast, Mike. Do you go back one? Thanks. There were handouts provided by the applicants to assist the directors to understand the various components of the proposed rezoning, and these handouts are attached to the EASC report, as well as a summary of the Q&A that took place during the meeting. Next slide, please. In addition to the electoral area directors and the CVRD staff who attended at the site visit, the applicant had a team of subject matter experts to assist with the Q&A. Everyone who attended is listed in the report. Next slide, please. So the site visit, which took place, the site visit report is presented for information and to ensure that the information provided is part of the public record for this application. And my question for the committee is whether there is any direction to the planner based on your increased knowledge of the application and the rezoning proposal. So do you have any additional direction for me, basically?
Okay, thank you. We can take the PowerPoint down. I do one thing myself, but I'll refer to the committee if anyone else. Any comments, questions for either Ms. Suderman or Mr. Adams or Mr. Mitchell? Looks like not. Okay, so I'd just like to say just about the affordable housing part of it, which I think is great. I do see it, Director Acton. I had a question that I asked on the tour about the age 55 plus thing, or whether it's going to be all ages. And I was pleased to hear it was going to be all ages. So I'm just would like to see if, I mean, for affordable housing, that's really what we need, is not just for seniors, but for younger people, and as a sort of a way to get a stepping stone into the real estate ownership game. So I'm told by staff this would be the appropriate time to provide board direction if we want to make that mandatory. I'm not so concerned necessarily about these owners, but any future owner. So I'd like to move that. I'd like to move this. We'll see if how this sounds. The staff ensure there are no age restrictions for owners of the manufactured home residences and cabins. I'd like to move that. If I have a seconder, I'll speak to that. So seconded. Okay, so I think basically I did a little research and I see that the vast majority of these manufactured home parks are in fact 55 plus. So I was very pleased that this one, the plan is to have it open to all, and that it stay that way so that we can have good affordable housing for all ages. So I think I'll leave it there, and I see Director Acton.
Well, so is that a motion and has it been second? Or?
Yes.
Okay, so it's to the motion. Can I ask some questions, other questions, or how are we, or are we just going to vote on your motion right now and then continue our conversation? Or do we, how does staff propose we proceed?
Point of order, Mr. Chair. Is this not for information here?
It is, but I was advised by staff that this would be appropriate time if there's any direction you want.
Thank you.
Okay. So Director Acton, yeah, I don't, I think if we maybe deal with this motion first and then move on to other questions. See, Director Kuhn has a question.
Yeah, I'm a bit confused. The application was approved. So what are we doing now? Are we now amending the application, or because this is not the usual process. We dealt with the application; it has gone through. So now we're kind of chipping away afterwards, or?
Well, I'll turn to Ms. Suderman, maybe to answer that one.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and through you to Director Kuhn. I think that what happened here is that there was a request for a site visit, which took place to assist the members of the committee with evaluating the merits of the rezoning application at the time of bylaw presentation. So the idea there was that if there were any things to come out of that, then this would be the time to suggest any kind of modifications to the original resolution that went forward to the board. So there is a resolution that has gone to the board to present bylaws, deal with covenants, public meeting, public hearing, and so on and so forth. But if there was anything additional at this point, this would be the time.
Okay, thank you. So any further questions on my motion? Director Acton.
I guess, it is an interesting motion, and I would also like to understand, because you're trying to ensure affordable housing. And then another measure that a lot of places do, on the mainland in particular, but no rentals of the property, so that, we're not just have people buying it as investment and then Airbnb-ing it and taking away that affordable housing stock, and the result is you're driving the prices up even more. So I'd like to understand the consequences of that as well. So perhaps we should be asking staff to come back with, what are the unintended consequences, or are those actually good measures to put on the property to ensure? Because I think that's important. This is, if the goal is to produce affordable housing, then we need to put whatever we can in there to ensure its success, because it's definitely a buzzword, and it's not very measurable or anything. So I don't think that it's personal on anyone, but it's just about ensuring that the market behaves the way we want it to, and with a huge development like this.
Okay, thank you. Director Kuhn, and then Director Wilson.
Yes, I have a comment. I think we all received an email from Director Wilson. I read it. I was very interested in it. It was an article that was published in one of the papers. I've forgotten which one. And it dealt with over-regulation at local government levels. And it struck my interest, because I thought quite often we at local governments, we are our own worst enemy, because we want to get things done, and yet we put so many hurdles in there that it gets more and more difficult to get something achieved. And that article was very well written, and I thought, yes, I think we've gone to a stage now where we try to regulate just about everything, and the more you do that, the lesser our space as individual becomes. We're boxing ourselves into smaller and smaller boxes, and I am the kind of individual, I like freedom. And I like developers to do something what they do best, and that is to produce something. And I have the impression at times we go overboard with over-regulating certain applications, and I feel that we would be much better off if we gave developers a little bit more freedom. That's where ingenuity comes in, and we are just the stumbling blocks. And so I just want to point that out. I'm kind of very kind of touchy on that, because I do believe in freedom. The more freedom we grant to others, the more freedom we have. And I think we don't really realize at times what we're doing, because we're boxing ourselves into smaller and smaller boxes, and I just don't like that. Thank you.
Thank you. So I've got Director Wilson and then Yanni Donato.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Interesting points being brought up here. At the MFA last week or the week before, I happened to sit next to the Senior Vice President of the Royal Bank Canada Global Asset Management. Big guy, you know, lots of background and deals with all sorts of things. And I said to him, when's the housing bubble going to burst? And he said, I don't know. Nobody knows. And here we are saying, you know, we should be looking at all these profits that people are going to make from selling their houses or buying. It's not our job. It's not our job. This is a straightforward application. We did the site visit. We saw exactly what the applicants are proposing here. I don't see anything wrong with it. And to be quite honest, Director Kuhn is exactly right. And that's why David Eby is doing what he's doing. We're regulating where we should not be regulating, and we're looking into things that we really have no business in, and certainly don't have the expertise to go into either.
Thank you. Director Yanni Donato.
I'm not going to touch either one of those comments because we do have a job to do. This is not a straightforward application. And Director Acton has some points with the Airbnb and daily rentals. There are investment companies buying up housing to rent out and do things with that is actually causing a lot more problems in their communities. So this is something that we need to be aware of, and that is something to think about. Not only that the age, the 55 plus, it should be open to all ages, and there should be something there as well as the daily rentals and Airbnb. And I believe that that is a huge problem in all of our areas, and we should be aware of it, and that's part of our responsibility. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead, Director Martman.
Would it be appropriate to maybe have the applicant just make a few comments about both of these topics?
My thoughts exactly. I was going to invite Mr. Adams or Mr. Mitchell. But you're on mute.
Muted, Greg.
Can you all hear me clearly?
There we go.
First, thank you to everyone that was able to come up to site. I thought that it's really appreciated from those of us that propose projects like this. Boots on the ground and getting a feel for a site definitely gives you a good indication what the proposal is. We touched on it a bit first. I agree 100% with Blaze. This is an opportunity for all ages. I think the market to some degree will decide the age that people buy in, but I have no problem in putting pen to paper if something needs to be put forth regarding it's open for all ages. Regarding the Airbnb, I agree as well. I do believe there is some value in longer term rentals, like monthly or, semi, 6 months at a time, or a month, at least a month. But I do not want to see it, weekly rentals, in the cabins or the, or in the park models. I don't want to see that happen because I don't think it will. I've seen too many problems where the kids, blaming the kids again, but the young the 20-year-olds rent a place and it turns into a party and a disaster. I couldn't agree with all of you more on that. That's not our intention. So same thing. Having said, I don't want to step on any toes here, but over-regulating and, you know, trying to get, and I say this with all due respect, but we can't get the market to behave the way we want. But what we can do is influence the market by bringing on product. And as there is more product, you know, if someone comes in and tries to buy a couple of these units and use them as monthly or yearly rentals, that's still available to the public. But at least with the volume of units, there'd be 180 opportunities for people to live up here, and plus the cabins. So that's, I hope that kind of answers some of it, but I'm with you. I'm on board regarding the weekly or weekend Airbnb. You're preaching to the choir. Regarding all ages, once again, same thing. I think this is out of the box thinking a bit, and I've seen the success of Chemainus Gardens, and I think this will be, because of the entertainment component, the proximity to Lake Cowichan, and also the amount of young people and all of us, like all of us right now, that are working over the internet through Zoom, etc. I do think this will be attainable housing for a lot of younger people. The amount, I don't know, but I think there will be younger people living up here.
Great, thank you. Director Yanni DiNardo.
So could I amend as your resolution, the 55, the all ages, and also add no daily rentals to that? Or will that be assumed that that could go in it, or do we have to mention that? Last staff that.
Okay, Ms. Suderman.
Yeah, thanks very much. The applicants and I, together with Habitat for Humanity, are already in the process of developing a housing agreement to cover various aspects of the housing component of this. And so we could definitely incorporate the concept of the all ages housing and the a minimum of a monthly rental into the Greg is objecting.
No, I'm not. I'm sorry. I'm just thinking of one thing. Because these are one-bedroom units predominantly, if any one of us lives there and then our adult children want to come and visit us for a week, if they can't fit into the unit, would we allow a couple of units, possibly even they're owned by the developer, us, that, you know how they'll have a condo, and then there's out of the 40 units, there's one unit available for guests type thing. Is that something? I'm not trying to muddy the waters. I'm just thinking out loud here.
You're talking about the potential for a guest suite on the property that would be managed by the office.
Yeah, one or two of them. So if one of the park models or two of them were guest suites. Having said that, Murphy beds work wonderfully too. So, you know, we don't need to muddy the water. You guys, I'm just asking for opinions.
Annie DiNardo?
Yeah, I have no problem with that. I have seen modular home parks in Nanaimo that have the guest cottages that are managed by the company. I just don't want to see that the daily rentals, Airbnb, and corporations buying them up for investment, and then they're not going to community for any kind of attainable housing. And I know we can't correct the market or whatever, but we do need to be aware of how we can not contribute to what is happening currently.
I agree.
Good. Okay. Well, could this be a rare time of we all agree, it seems? Even Klaus, perhaps. It's a no restriction motion that we're doing after all. All right. Any further questions before I call the question? Director Morrison.
Thank you. I just rejoined. I thought this was an information item, but I missed, obviously, there's a resolution on the floor. Could I have just the resolution and a little bit of background, please?
Yes, Ms. Legault, what do you have?
Mr. Chair, please feel free to correct me since this was your motion, but it was that be recommended to the board that staff ensure that no age restrictions are applied to the manufactured homes and cabins.
That's correct. And I'm not sure if we did want to amend the sense of that with Lori's Go ahead, Director Yanni Donato.
Yeah, I wonder if we could also add that the no daily rentals, if that was appropriate, or if Ms. Suderman is already going to be looking at that with the developers. I just wondered if it's clearly stated somewhere.
Ms. Suderman, do you have a preference? Can we leave that to be determined, or do we? I'll just get to you in a moment, Ian. But
I think it would be clearer if it came in the form of a motion directing us to do this work as part of the housing agreement, or however we do it. Because your motion does not currently specify that it has to be in the housing agreement, but this is what we're talking about already, and that's a logical place, but you don't have to specify how we do it, just that it needs to be done.
Okay, so we could say add.
Yeah, I'd like to add the daily rentals.
Okay. Then I have Director Morrison and then Klaus.
Thank you. And at the EA workshop today, there was a fair bit of discussion on short-term rentals. So I'm wondering if the wording might be something to the effect that and that a policy to be developed that there be no non-developer or non-owner. I'm referring to the developer here. No non-developer commercial short-term rentals. So that would, and I don't know if there would be a seconder for that, but it just to be added into the policy so that the big commercial operators that Director Yanni Thenardo is talking about aren't having listings in there, and that it's truly as Mr. Adams had described an amenity for the owners and the development.
Ms. Suderman?
Yeah, just a clarification question, please. So is that a policy or an aspect of this motion specific to this particular project, or is that something more universal for the Cowichan Valley Regional District?
Dr. Morrison?
My idea was that it was specific to this development, as Mr. Adams has just explained, that there will be no doubt owners that would like to have the amenity that is available in a lot of condo units and more compact developments where a family member can come and stay, but not in the same unit as the owners, because they'll be quite small, but there is that availability to people connected to the development, and that it's just not going to be another listing on a major short-term accommodation rental site.
Okay.
Understood. Thank you.
All right. Any further comments? Director Yanni Donato.
So to be clear, is the daily rentals on your resolution now, or do I have to make an amendment?
I thought it was.
Okay,
Yeah.
Thank you.
See Director Smith?
Thank you. I think Mr. Adams earlier indicated that he was more interested in the minimum being a month and not weekly, not daily, but a minimum being a month. So I think I heard that earlier. And so would it be a friendly amendment if or have we amended too many times? And Klaus, you can stop shaking your head. Sorry. But I did hear Mr. Adams indicate that.
Yeah, I hesitate to make it too much more complicated. I think we're in aligned on the general intention with the original one, and including Laurie's first amendment. Okay, Klaus, final word.
Well, but if that's what we're doing with Laurie's first amendment, that is no day-to-day rental, right?
Right.
Then we're excluding the possibility of the developer having maybe some kids stay over for a short period of time in some unit. So now we're chiseling and chiseling. This is ridiculous, this whole process. I mean, Man, why don't we just go with the motion that was originally on the table and leave all the short-term rental and all this stuff out and trust the developer a little bit rather than trying to nail him down with every little bit. And no, you're not allowed to do this. No, you can. Come on now, guys. Get off it.
Okay, Ms. Suderman, did you want to comment?
Yeah, I think the motion is clear, and I think it's easily managed and and in accordance with my understanding of the applicant's intentions.
Perfect. Okay. With that, I'd like to call the question. All in favor? Opposed? 2 opposed. Motion carries.
Thank you very much.
Any further discussion on this Laketown issue? I think everybody's good. Okay.
I had a question.
Go ahead, Director Acton.
Yeah, when I read the offer, so sorry I couldn't come to the site tour. It was March break. Is there going to be another? I read that in the original email that there'd be another opportunity. Is that true?
Mr. Adams.
If I don't know procedurally, so I don't want to be inappropriate with my suggestion. I am here right now, and I come here 7 days a week. I love this place, very proud of it. And if it's acceptable, anyone could arrange with me to come and see this place anytime they wanted. I just don't want to be doing something wrong that's not right in this process.
Thank you. I really appreciate
No
the offer.
gifts. No gifts or anything like that.
No opinions, just only facts.
Okay, thank you. Because I think the process, maybe staff can just clarify the process. So what are the next steps? So I think it will come back to this committee again after a public hearing. So I guess it would be beneficial to have a tour.
Ms. Suderman?
Yes, thank you for the opportunity. I would encourage anybody who wasn't able to join us for the tour to take Mr. Adams up on his offer. As long as the tour is one-on-one, there's no danger of quorum. We had some special rules and so on about the site visit because there were 7 out of 9 electoral area directors there. So we needed to be very clear on the process and the protocol for that meeting. The next steps are I'm busily preparing draft bylaws and a public information meeting as requested is being scheduled. Tentatively at this point, the date is April the 28th in the evening. And you will be receiving invitations as soon as that is confirmed. After the public information meeting, there will be minutes that will be forthcoming to the EASC along with revised draft bylaws. So I'm hoping that will be on your timetable by the second meeting in May. And then hopefully those draft bylaws can go directly to board after that for first and second reading, which would then be followed by public hearing. So that's as far as I'm willing to go in my thinking at this point, because I don't want to presume anything. But yes, I'm hoping that we will be at public hearing stage sometime in June.
Great. And Director Martman?
Thank you, Chair. My unasked questions were answered.
Okay, perfect. Oh, Director Wilson.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm just about to switch my video off because I'm just about to bite into a very large chocolate bar. Thank you.
It's that time of day, Mike's Chocolate Hour. Okay, thank you. And thank you very much to Greg and Mark for coming. Really appreciate it. And great. I think we can move on to the next item, please, Ms. Legault.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Item R6 is a report from Parks and Trails Division on the 2022 Parks and Trails Special Event Permit Application for Saltaire Slow Pitch League, use of Saltaire Centennial Park ball diamonds, and this is for direction.
Okay. Director Smith.
Thank you very much. First, I'd like to thank the Parks and Trails staff and the bylaw enforcement who have taken the time to work with the league. You see that there's been progressive warnings and expectations of the league to comply with posted park bylaw regulations and conditions of the special event permit requirements were communicated verbally and in writing. It's disappointing that the staff would have to take all that extra time. Permit was applied for last year. The rules and regulations are in that permit, and it was constant for the staff to have to continue contacting the representative. There were many complaints that they received. I also received many complaints. I had a person even knock on my door and leave me a letter. There was concerns with the smoking, with the drinking, with the during the extreme fire hazard time, there was multiple cigarette smoking going on, and the residents that are adjacent to the park have huge concerns of any fire, and if there was a fire in Saltaire, it would take the whole of Saltaire. I would, at this time, just like to move along today. It's been a long day, and I would take option 1 that has been presented, that it be recommended to the board that a Parks and Trails special event permit for the Saltaire Slow Pitch League for use of the ball diamonds at Saltaire Centennial Park be between April 23rd and July 22nd, 2022 be denied. And I'd like to speak to that for a minute.
Okay, moving that. Do we have a seconder? Seconder for that option. Seconded by Director Acton. Okay, discussion. Director Yanni DiNardo or Director Smith, did you want to speak first or come back to you? Okay, Director Yanni DiNardo.
Thank you. It has been really challenging with COVID, and Director Smith has told me all of the issues. I've seen that, and I've heard that, and I was aware of them all. But I think that the league has now heard, and they should be given another chance, because with COVID and restrictions and cost of doing things and events, it's really challenging in a community right now to restrict them from any type of curricular or any type of activity and stuff. So I won't be supporting it because I think we should give them another chance. And I think this is it's sort of an easy way for the community to get back together. And through this last 2 years, it's been so challenging, and see how they do. So I would be more inclined to go with option 2, not to deny yet. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Director Smith.
Thank you. I understand that we have been under COVID. This is not something that just happened this year. This has been going on for multiple years, way before COVID. People urinating in the park, exposing themselves as people walk by and laughing at them. The alcohol consumption, the smoking, this has been going on for years. And also, there are all other ball diamonds in the areas in Chemainus and Ladysmith. The majority of the players are not from Saltaire, and there's other ball areas that they could take their league to, and it would lessen the angst within the community and those that are adjacent to this, and the threat of fire for their homes to be burnt. And I think that they have been given multiple options last year, and they were not willing to comply with that. If they say they're willing to comply with it this year, they haven't shown any real change when they were given all those options last year to make changes. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And I saw Director Morrison.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't have the I don't have this open in front of me, and I was hoping we could perhaps hear from Mr. Dias some of the background if we could.
Yeah, Mr. Dias.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through to Director Morrison. Director Smith is correct. There has been compliance issues over the years, of which we've always had a good working relationship with the Saltaire Ball League. You know, you're talking 15 players per team times 10 teams. There's 150 people to try to make sure that they all behave. They do have a tall order. This is a recreational league, and there has been success in years past. To speak to last year, which is fairly well articulated in the staff report, there was multiple issues. There were multiple warnings. There were written warnings, verbal warnings. You know, when someone comes to the CVRD and rents a sheet of ice, for example, and there's compliance issues, recreation staff are basically, you know, leaning on an alcohol and substance use policy that they have for the facility, where the user group is given a warning, and then they're given a written warning, and then the third time their you know, privileges are removed. In our case, we sort of have we don't have a policy to support us. We have a special event application that allows us to enforce our park bylaw, and it allows us to enforce the conditions of the special event applications. So it's sort of the same thing. We have the ability to implement the same type of measures that the rec center uses with a policy, where we can continue and hope that they change their behavior this year and use the 3 strikes and you're out rule as we go forward. So I hope, Director Morrison, that gives you a little bit of background. I know in years past, we have had a few user groups up in the Massachi area, and we've done a similar process with. Some of them actually went by the wayside and didn't continue renting the facility, and some carried on with, you know, with their play. So I would leave it to the committee. You know, the details are in the report. There are 2 options for consideration. And yeah, I'm happy to answer any more questions if there is any.
Okay, thank you. Director Wilson.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I think the key phrase there that Mr. Dias mentioned is the 3 strikes and you're out. There's been plenty of warnings from what Director Smith has said here, and if that's the policy that the CVRD applies, I don't see why we shouldn't apply it in this particular case as well. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, any further comments? Director Smith.
I'd just like to point out that taxpayers had to fund the bylaw enforcement that had to be out there on different occasions, and that's not a good way that we should be having fun within our communities. And I would ask that they had their strikes last year, and they made choices last year and the years before, and I ask that we deny it and that they seek a location elsewhere. Thank you.
Okay. Director Yanni DiNardo.
So I wonder if it was clearly stated to this group that there's like 3 strikes, you're out. Like if they were given the notice and, you know, given one more time that this is how it's going to be. I don't know, what did they do in Director Morrison's? Did they give them a chance and clearly state that 3 strikes are out? Because I think that would be a better way of doing it.
Director Smith?
When you sign the event permit, it states clearly, fail to follow the terms and conditions will result in the denial of any further special event permit applications for the applicant. And I think that they were given multiple emails, multiple communication, and they still continued down that road. And that is I think that's your three strikes. I think that you sign a document and they weren't willing to comply. Thank you.
And Ryan, you have a final comment?
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure the committee had seen the letter submitted by the Saltair Ball League that if option 2 was chosen, these are the sort of terms and conditions that they, would be implementing on their end to ensure compliance and that all concerns were addressed. So we have reviewed that letter with the applicant, and ultimately it is up to the applicant. It's not for the taxpayers to enforce the behavior, the conduct of a special event. But I just wanted to point out, I know for Director Morrison, who's on the road, they have submitted a letter outlining how they will address issues should they come up this year.
Okay, thank you for that. Okay, any further comments? I think we're ready to call the question on Director Smith's motion, which is to deny. Klaus, are you wanting to speak? No? Okay. All right, so I'll call the question. All in favor? That's 6, I believe. Opposed? 1 opposed. Okay, motion carries. Thank you. So now, should we just power on through I think these are 2 shorter ones. Let's try next item, please. Ms. Legault.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Item R7 is a report from Community Planning with a referral from Islands Trust on bylaw amendments, and the proposed recommendation is that it be recommended to the board that the Islands Trust be informed that the interests of the CVRD are unaffected by draft bylaw 526.
Okay. Are you moving that, Director Yanni DiNardo, and seconding? Okay. Any discussion? Director Martman.
Wow, this is quite the documents that were provided from Salt Spring. And I'm just would like to ask a question of staff is, are something parallel happening within the CVRD?
Okay, I see who do we have for staff? I see 2 staff. Okay, Mr. Tibbet.
Oh, well, who's the other? Oh, Emily. I didn't realize you're here, Emily. I will defer to Emily.
I am still here. Through you, Mr. Chair, to the Director. The CVRD Community Planning Division has taken the direction that any conversation about the changes that have happened at the ALC level, that they should be discussed through the modernized official community plan process and through the community circles that are occurring now and into next month, I guess.
Okay, thank you. Does that answer your question, Director Martman? Go ahead.
I think I expected the answer, but I'm just wondering if there may be opportunity to share the document with people that are thinking about what the ALC's changes may have and what one jurisdiction is doing with it as a way to sort of prime the pump.
Ms. Dixon?
Sharing the documents with who? Sorry, I wasn't clear on that.
I don't know if we're able to share these documents. I think they're public now because they're put on PrimeGov. And just that sometimes priming the pump in terms of discussion around what other jurisdictions are doing around housing on agricultural land and changes that are coming about because of changes at the ALC. And it helps stimulate discussion, before ORCON. I'm not saying which way it should go, but I'm just saying it's maybe a document that could be useful if a link is shared.
Certainly, through you, Mr. Chair, to the Director. That is an option that we could certainly do, is have more information available on our website for the public to know about the changes that have happened at the ALC level. The Salt Spring Island case is, I think, a good example, and one that you've seen through this report is that they have done a tremendous amount of work with respect to amending their zoning bylaw. So you are correct also that this report has been made public already through our PrimeGov. However, it's also on the Salt Spring Island website and available for public. So should that be the direction, that could be something that we could arrange.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions?
Just a follow. So perhaps. So follow. Sorry. Thanks, Chair. So maybe as a follow-up, it's just. I'm not saying it. I think it's just one more piece of information to go out if they want to see an example. You know, and I'm not sure where it would go, but I guess it's one thing that I just looked at and thought someone's done a lot of work here, and it's worth. It might help people understand the ramifications of OCP decisions when they come out as a bylaw.
Okay, well, it's public now, so if you have any ideas, I'm sure we could get it.
I'm looking for. Yeah, leave it to staff.
Okay. Thank you, Director Marvin. Any further comments before I call the question? Seeing none, it's been moved and seconded. All in favor? Opposed? None opposed, motion carries. Thank you. Ms. Legault, the next item, please.
Item R8, thank you, Mr. Chair, is a report from Planning Strategic Initiatives regarding OCP for the electoral areas bylaw number 4373, schedules D, G, L, N, and T maps, and this is for information.
Okay, and Ms. Breen is here to answer any questions, I assume.
Yes, thank you. Ms. Cross has a brief presentation if the committee would like to hear it, just on the changes on Schedule G, which is the growth containment boundaries, Schedule L, land use designations, just very high level, but also introducing timely Schedule D, agriculture lands, Schedule T, transportation, and Schedule N, First Nations, and explaining the differences between the HOCP schedules and the MOCP schedules so that we can table these for the community circle discussions as backup information. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, and welcome, Ms. Cross.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will share my screen. Move this out of the way. It's a very brief presentation that I have for you today. We're just looking at bylaw 4373 OCP for the electoral areas mapping changes. And we amended Schedule G, growth containment boundaries, and Schedule L, land use designations. They were refined after further review and feedback, as outlined in the explanation of changes. And there are 3 new MOCP schedules, which are similar to the schedules in HOCP bylaw 4270. We're keeping the same schedule lettering in the MOCP bylaw, as you can see. So the new schedules are Schedule D for agricultural lands, Schedule N for First Nation, and Schedule T for transportation and major roads. So now let's look quickly at some examples.
Okay.
So here's an example of a change that was made to Schedule G, the growth containment boundaries. In Area B, we removed parcels that were south of Baldy Mountain Road from the growth containment boundary near Shawnigan Lake Village. If servicing opportunities become available, this area may be considered for inclusion in the growth containment boundary in the future. And that's just one example. Other changes to Schedule L are outlined in the explanation of changes. And now looking to Schedule L for land use designations, this is the same area that we just saw for the growth containment boundary. And here we can see, again, it's just south of Shawnigan Lake Village. Since these parcels are no longer included in the growth containment boundary, the designations have been changed to reduce the allowed density. And we also added a special study area for infrastructure and servicing, which you can see here with the brown hatching. And similarly, other changes to Schedule L are outlined in the explanation of changes. Now moving to the new schedules. Schedule D contains the agricultural lands maps. In the HOCP bylaw 4270, ALR lands were shown on maps titled Agricultural Land Reserve, and the renewable resource agriculture designations were shown on separate maps that were titled Agricultural Lands. In MOCP bylaw 4373, the maps show both the ALR and the agricultural designations together with new symbolism. So the agricultural land reserve is now in green hatching, and that is on top of the solid green lands designated agriculture. And this solid green agriculture designation is the same color as it is in Schedule D as it is in Schedule L. So there's continuity between the two schedules. Schedule N shows the First Nation reserve lands as per the Canada Land Survey Records, which is the Federal Registry of Legal Survey Documents for First Nation reserves. In Bylaw 4270, Schedule N was called First Nations maps, and all of the First Nation reserve lands were symbolized as a single orange color. In Bylaw 4373, each First Nation is identified and symbolized uniquely. We are aware of other First Nations data sets, such as the Statement of Intent Boundaries registered with the BC Treaty Commission, and we will be consulting with First Nations on the appropriate use of this data. And then the last new MOCP schedule is Schedule T, Transportation and Major Roads. These maps show transit routes as well as major roads. And we will have other MOCP schedules forthcoming in the future. And that's all I have for that.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? Director Smith and then Nicholson.
Thank you very much. I just have a question for staff through the chair. The growth containment boundary for Area G, now that the Coastal Shoreline Stability Assessment report has come out, I'm really concerned about the map that we have for the growth containment boundary, and I'm just wondering if it should be amended before it moves forward. Thank you.
Who would like to take that one?
Through the chair, on April 20th, we will be tabling a draft DPA 7, which will be known as Bylaw 4427, which will replace the DPA map, and it will show a crosshatched area for the DPA. If it's layered on top of the growth containment boundary and that is approved, then going forward, we'll amend the growth containment boundary after the community consultation.
Okay. All right, Director Nicholson.
Thank you. On the table that speaks to the differences under Area E land use designation maps, it says aligned temporary use designations to all other designations in Area E to clean up the alignment of temporary use with other designations. I don't understand what this means.
The designations for the temporary use designation for Area E applies to, I believe it applies to all designations.
Yes, that's
Area
correct.
E.
Yep.
And so, except for water designations, it was so the temporary use designation will occur on the same parcels as the designations, the other designations except for water designations. Sorry, does that
makes sense?
So all other designations other than water designations will also be temporary use designations.
Director Nicholson.
So thank you. So that was what I was afraid. And when we were doing the Area E OCP review, the community was not wild about temporary use permits at all. And I recognize that we have a special one for the ski club, which is fine. But in general, they've caused quite a bit of problems in our area. If you came after Rock of the Woods, but there's been quite a lot of controversy about the use of temporary use permits. And so given that this is the modernized stage, I am wondering why we're continuing to put that forward, or how we maybe need to rethink whether that's appropriate.
Spring.
Yes, through the chair, we're going to be bringing forward a bylaw. I think it's 4442. I'm not sure, Andrea, on that number. Temporary use designations, aligning them with some things that were missed, some nuances within the next 6 weeks or so. And Area E is one of the changes that will be seen. The temporary use designation Area E is very unique because it was adopted by a separate bylaw. There's some nuances there. as opposed to being adopted as an actual land use designation.
Okay, I got it. All right.
So we'll be in touch about that one.
Thank you.
Okay, Ms. Cross.
Thank you, through the chair. And further to that, it's bylaw 4431 that will be forthcoming.
Great, thank you. Okay, any further questions? Seeing none, that's great. Thank you, too, for staying with us all afternoon and those for information. So I think we can move on to the next item, please, Ms. Legault.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There are no requests to participate in question period, and there are no closed session items, so a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn. Oops, seconded, carried. Thanks, everyone. Thanks very much. Good night. Thanks, Angie.